Supervisors is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Bumke?
Here.
Mr. Cavalier?
Here.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Mr. Dudenhepper?
Here.
Mrs. Maurer?
Here.
Ms. Shelton?
Here.
Mr. Snellings?
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Giles. I'm Meg Bomke. I represent the Falmouth District and serve as the chairman of the Board of Supervisors. This afternoon, I'm excited to share with you a brief video about a new mile marking system on the Rappahannock River. The Rappahannock River is the longest free-flowing river on the East Coast and comes together with the Rapidan River at what is called the confluence, which is 10 miles upriver from Stafford and Fredericksburg. Except for the area around Fredericksburg, the river is heavily wooded on both sides. This was an initiative that started with members of Stafford Fire and Rescue. Members of the Swift Water Rescue Team were looking for a better way to locate recreational users who were in trouble on the Rappahannock River. They teamed up with the city of Fredericksburg to install a mile marker system to help people to pinpoint the location of boaters, tubers, and others that may be in trouble on the river. This summer, members of Stafford Fire and Rescue's Swift Water Rescue Team and Officer Joe Young placed each sign by hand. They canoed and kayaked down the river with tools and supplies, stopping to climb trees and placing the brown metal signs with white lettering. The signs are located on river left if you are floating downstream on the Rappahannock. Emergency personnel ask river users to familiarize themselves with the mile signs and to note their location via the mile markers as they move along the river. Will the clerk now please show the video?
I love this river. It is the longest free-flowing river on the East Coast, about 195 miles from the Blue Ridge Mountains all the way down to the bay. It's great for fishermen. It's great for people that want to come out here for recreation. It's got something for everybody, and Fredericksburg is kind of right in the central hub.
The city of Fredericksburg acquired about 5,000 acres and 90 miles of waterfront back in 1969. In summertime, from Mott's boat slip, which is about maybe 5 miles upstream, down to city docks, we'll see tens of thousands of users each season.
We do river rescues pretty often. On average, we rescue about a little over 30 people a year, and that can be anywhere from 20 to 50 water rescue calls per season. Those areas that are easily accessible are right here in the city of Fredericksburg. When we get west of 95, those areas are very difficult to try and locate somebody. The river has basically a heavily wooded area on both sides of it when you get west of 95, and oftentimes when we get calls out there, it'll take us a long time to locate somebody.
A typical rescue is 4 to 8 hours, which is unacceptable for a person in distress. But then also the first responders in this heat, in neoprene, walking around for 4 to 8 hours through the woods trying to find these people, that's unacceptable.
Officer Young and I got together and met, and kind of in our discussions, you know, we both kind of came to the conclusion that some areas of the river were very difficult for us to locate people. And because of that, you know, we wanted to come up with a way to maybe make that a little easier. The Friends of the Rappahannock puts out this water trail guide, which is great. It's actually a really great map of the river, and it gives you the actual miles of the Rappahannock itself.
John said, you know, there's this great mile marker book, and it shows you where you're at, but there's nothing on the shoreline that corresponds to this book.
So our idea was to put mile marker signs on the river itself.
Subconsciously, when you pass a mile marker sign, put it in the back of your head, I just passed the 138. I just passed the 137. That way, when things go bad, and they can very quickly, know where you're at.
So if you're traveling downstream, all the signs are going to be placed on river left, approximately 10 to 12 feet up in the air. Basically, just keep track of where you are, and you know you should be able to locate yourself pretty easily. Hopefully, if we save one life, you know, by putting these signs out, then the whole program's worth it.
Great. So many thanks to everyone who was involved in this venture, which was aimed at saving lives. on the river. And thanks to Stafford County Fire and Rescue for coming up with this idea and for partnering with our friends to the south, the city of Fredericksburg. The first order of business is approval of the meeting agenda. We do have one item to be added to the consent, proposed resolution R18-250. It's a request from the Planning Commission for a 100-day time extension to review and redefine the RBC recreational business campus and the PD3 zoning district. So do I have a motion or any questions about the add-on item?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, cast your vote. Tally the vote. Thank you, that passes unanimously. With that, I'm going to invite Mr. Kyle Bates up to do the quarterly report from the Virginia Department of Transportation. Welcome, Mr. Bates. You get to put a suit on, isn't that
I
fun?
know. Moving on up in the world. All right, so again, my name's Kyle Bates, members of the board, thank you for having me. Just real quick, I was going to go over some of the highlights on the VDOT report, which you all should have a copy of. Just to go through some of the construction projects that we have ongoing throughout Stafford County. The I-95 and 630 interchange and roadway widening project. The signal at the school entrance is now fully operational. And the bridge beams over 95 are now set. So the fixed completion date on that project is still on slate to be July of 2020. We have the I-95 southbound Rappahannock River crossing. Construction started with median clearing near Cowan Boulevard and between Cowan Boulevard and Route 3, that area, and that scheduled completion is 2022. We have the flashing yellow arrow upgrades, which all of those on the list that you have are now complete. There is another list of flashing yellow arrows coming through the pipeline, but a lot of these flashing yellow arrows are going to require a structural analysis. They aren't as easy as just swapping some stuff out. We have to do a whole analysis on the actual structure itself to see if the load rating is acceptable. As far as preliminary engineering, we have the I-95 FredEx hot lane extension. Estimated completion for that is 2022. Another preliminary engineering, we have the temporary signal at Route 1 and Telegraph. So that is actually now fully up, running. We have the sign, I believe, which I've heard is up, restricting vehicles to make that left turn in the AM period. So that is up and fully operational. And then we have the last one that to give an update on is the Raven Road hard surfacing, which is surface treatment. We're looking to begin that in the spring of 2019. So. And then the last few things I have here, I have the paving operations for you all to take a look at. And this is for the 2018 schedule. We're currently working on the 2019 schedule. It's been put out. We're waiting to hear back on the bids for that. And then we have the Vistawood drainage. As far as maintenance goes, the Vistawood drainage, we're still working on replacing as many of those pipes as we can. We're looking to have that resurfaced pending funding in 2020. So with that, that's the updates that I have. Do you all have any questions or anything for me?
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Bates? Mr. Dudenheffer?
Yes, sir.
Kyle, you represent VDOT, so unfortunately, I can't tell you how disappointed I am that VDOT and the state rejected our request that we put a southbound entrance onto the new express lanes. I mean, it shows here we're in the planning stage for it, and they already say it was too late for us to get consideration. I'm going to reiterate what I've told your boss and the secretary and our elected officials in the state, is that I feel it was a total rejection of Stafford County and a neglect to look at the residents and the needs of the residents in Stafford County. You want their money to pay the tolls, but you don't want to provide services, in my opinion, that would be beneficial to the county as a whole and to the residents, especially those up in North Stafford off of Courthouse and Garrisonville Road. So I'm not sure what my next step will be, but I'm not going to go down without a fight. I'm working on an op-ed that I hope to go statewide with it. I think it was really shallow of them not to consider Stafford County, not to consider moving the on-ramp that's going to go way up by Telegraph Road down to where the Stafford residents in North Stafford can actually use the southbound portion of the express lanes, which they're going to pay in heavy tolls to get through Stafford County and to start with. So please pass that along. They haven't heard the last of me, as they probably know. So,
Understood.
thank you for coming. I appreciate all the work we're doing. Sometimes you can get lost in the fact that we have $1.5 billion worth of road work going on, but it's still not even close to addressing our needs that are required across the county. We just had a meeting in our infrastructure committee meeting where we looked at all the secondary roads in Stafford, which, to be honest, the state and VDOT totally ignore. We have no way of getting those major roads addressed. We actually had a bad week on I-95 this week, as I'm sure you know. We had the interstate closed down, 3 of the 5 days this week, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And what happens when that happens is every secondary road in Stafford County gets clogged. And it goes, and it proceeds further west, all the way out. I was on Poplar Road with extra traffic, Kellogg Mill. All of these lanes are all out there. They're all clogged because the I-95 got shut down. So somewhere along the line, I hope that we can get the state to actually recognize that it's not just I-95 that's causing the problems, that it's being generated and it creates a problem throughout the entire county. And it hurts our economic development. It hurts the quality of life of the people in Stafford. And personally, I don't think it's being given enough weight. So, but thank you very much for coming down.
Understood. I know that we talked in our coordination meeting just last week about the prioritization and funding of some of these secondary roads that you were talking about. I know that your county staff has been very much on top of prioritizing that and working with the board, from what I understand. So we'll be working with them to come up with funding mechanisms to try and fund some of these secondary improvements. So, but understood. Thank you.
It's a good political answer. But go ahead.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Ms. Mauer.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Bates. How are you today?
Good. How's everything?
Just kind of want to get an update as far as all of the sinkholes that we've been having. I know that we've been inundated with rain, and I see your face. You don't want to hear the word sinkhole. But we're working on Poplar Road to replace the pipe under there. I see that Parkway Boulevard has been completed. Where are we with some of these others, and are we expecting future road closures?
As far as the sinkholes and the emergency failures that we've run into, I think Poplar was one of the last of them. We had a list of about 9 or 10. I know.
Did we fix the one in Cindy's district? Did that one get fixed, or is that a long-term project? What was that, Bell's Plain?
That's beginning next week.
Okay.
That's not as much of a sinkhole as much as it is a slope issue. So we're having a contractor fly in from North Carolina, the same contractor that was doing Bell's Hill, which that should be finished probably within the next week, and Bell's Hill should be back open. So we're looking to get that same contractor to mobilize over to Brook Road and do the same thing. They're soil nails, so they're going to be stabilizing the slope in place, and that is a one-way in, one-way out. So we're watching it on a weekly basis, making sure it's not worsening. But that should be the end of it. As far as the pipe replacements go, Poplar Road was the last pipe replacement that was an immediate have to get done now. Everything else, there's plenty of these corrugated metal pipes around. We are fighting this battle every day.
And just for the public's, everybody is, they look in their own neighborhood and the only, their pipe that is failing. Approximately how many failures did we have within Stafford County due to the inundation of rain? I think it's important for people to understand the extent to which you guys were working quite hard in order to kind of keep the roads up and moving.
I spent probably about $2.5 million that I had not planned on spending. And that most of that, I will say, went to the slope failures, being Brook Road and Bell's Hill. But just some of the other pipe replacements that we've had, Poplar being one of them, Brookwood, Brook Road, They were Parkway, Eustis was a big one, absolutely. So we've probably had 10 or 11. I'm kind of shooting from the hip right now, but I believe it's been about 10 or 11 emergency pipe failures. A couple in Vista Woods, as you know, as well. So we're at the very tail end of this. We've replaced more pipes in the last 3 months than I think I've replaced in the last 3 years. So it was needed. It was needed, unfortunately, at the expense of my budget.
I just wanted to thank you for all your hard work on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Cohen?
Thank you. Real quickly, I noticed in your list you mentioned about the Chatham Bridge replacement, and I've had people in my end of the county concerned about the impact that's going to happen when people can no longer get into the city that way,
Right.
and they either go to the Falmouth Bridge or they come over to the Bridge to Nowhere
Through the
over Route
city.
3, and then the basically Route 2 into the city. So is there, if you don't have an answer now, if you'll send me it so I can disseminate it, is there any plan to help with the impact of that once all those cars that normally go over the Chatham Bridge can't go that way?
Absolutely. We're doing some improvements actually within the city limits. VDOT's going into the city limits and doing these improvements because we know that the added traffic coming from that detour. And at the end of the project, they're going to get to keep the improvements as well. And I can send you some details
Yes,
as far
please.
as what that is, what the detour is, and how long the closure is going to be.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Mr. Bates, could you send that to the entire board for me?
Absolutely.
Or if you send it to me, I'll disseminate it either way. Mr. Snellings?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thanks for being here, Kyle. I just want to take a moment to underscore what Mr. Dudenhofer said. I don't pretend to be anywhere near the expert he is on transportation, but I can tell you it is the #1 topic in this county. I just had a town hall meeting last night. They didn't talk about schools. They didn't talk about crowded school buses. They didn't talk about any of that. They talked about roads and what we're going to do to fix them. This is not a funny story, but it's kind of unique. I went to a funeral 3 weeks ago at my church, and the preacher in the pulpit mentioned the crowded roads in Stafford County. So that's how bad it's getting. And I'm not sure what the state can do. Obviously, the county has limited resources, but something has got to be done for these secondary roads. It is choking us. It takes me, depending on the time of the day, the house that my wife and I live in, we built 39 years ago. The traffic count per day by that house was 250 cars a day. Today, 39 years later, same road, no improvements, no nothing, 8,500 per day. I can't even go to my mailbox at certain times of the day. And I'm not saying this to make you look bad or to dress you down. I'm just saying if you could pass this on, and I know you do, to the powers that be, we've got to have help on these secondary roads. We've just got to do it. The other thing, I just got a letter, and I think you did as well, concerning the intersection of Truslow Road and Old Truslow Road. And I think you're familiar with that. When you pull out, it's kind of hard to see. And if we could maybe get together on that, I'll give you a call, you give me a call. Let me give you a call.
Absolutely.
And see if we can get
I know
together
that
on that.
we trimmed some of that brush back today. But
Good.
now, that being said, that's just the brush within the right-of-way. Anything outside of the right-of-way, I think it's a good idea. Like you said, we can.
Yeah, and I think the trimming is a short-term solution. I think we really need to come up with a long-term solution. Because I was there not too long ago, and it is very difficult to see out of there. And even though that's a 35-mile speed limit, that means nothing today.
Yeah,
But I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
absolutely.
Okay, Mr. Cavalier?
Kyle, I just want to thank you for my little piece of the world there and getting that traffic signal in on Telegraph and Route 1 before the school year started. You can't believe how appreciative everyone is for that. It was a huge safety concern, and for you to step in, you just came into your new job. I know you had a lot on your plate, and to get that accomplished, really, I really appreciate that. So, as a reward for that, I'm having a town hall this Saturday morning.
I hear. I'll be there. Yeah.
Are you going to be there?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I hadn't heard specifically, but I'm glad I'm getting the #1 guy.
I had
Thank
to
you,
check
sir.
with my boss being my wife, because it's on Saturday. So.
Well, that's understandable.
No problem.
I
I can
appreciate
do
it. I'll
that.
see you then.
Okay, Ms. Shelton.
Mr. Bates, thank you so much for the work that you've done on Bells Hill. I'm glad that we're finally getting that finished. Ms. Maurer brought up the next one is when we're going to start on the other part of Brook Road where it's splitting. I hear about that every day, and I know you do too, because many people copy me on those emails. So thanks for the update on that. Now, Mr. Bates, let's talk about the flooding on Brook Road. Now, we've had lots of conversations, and my discussions last week with several of our staff members is that we, Stafford County, needs to do an assessment with you to be able to determine if the culverts are the right size, given the amount of years that it's doing. And I sent an email to our chairman today to request that we have that added to an agenda item. If there's something else that you think that we need to do that we're not doing, please apprise me, because I don't know what that is. And so our intent is to solve that problem that we may have created, you may have created. I don't care who created, it's a problem. All right? But I do want to thank you very much for all the work that you've done on the other part of Brook Road, that big project and the cutoff. It's really, really going well, and we really appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
Mr. Dudenheffer.
Didn't talk about stormwater, golly. Thank you for planning on attending my town hall meeting tomorrow night. It will be very contentious, as most of them I'm sure are.
Sure.
But it'll be strictly on stormwater. My question though is the Eustis Road sinkhole that we had still has cones all over it. And I got an email from the guy on the corner saying that it's still sinking, probably settling is really more what it is. Dominion Power still hasn't come in and restored their transformer that fell in the hole. So I mean, it's like we hurried up and did some emergency work. When is the rest of the work to where it's back to normal? And then there, by the way, it'll never be normal for those people that live there, okay? And the state has rejected their claim for the flooding that caused by the damaged pipe into their basements, which I find to be pretty egregious. And I got Senator Stewart is working with me with the Attorney General's office on that. But again, it's like it's still showing that it's there's still work going on there. There's lines all over the place. There's cones, and they claim it's sinking. So what can we do about that? Would you take a look or have someone?
Absolutely, and I spoke with the gentleman on the corner, I believe it was less than a week ago. So we're looking to, we're going to replace that driveway, given that we had to do the work within that easement, which is where the pipe failed. So we're
Well,
going
you
to
had
be
huge cranes all over his driveway.
Absolutely,
It's not
absolutely.
designed for that.
So no, so we've agreed, regardless of the claim, we're going to do our part to put it back to the way that it was for the project as it was intended, at least. So we're looking to do that at the same time that we come and overlay Bells Hill, the same contractor that's going to resurface that area, because we've tore that area up as well, given the slope failure. That same contractor is going to come in and do the resurfacing on the driveway. A lot of the cones, I can take a look at that, but we do need to get back in there, just given the settling over time, which is very much standard. We'll put some more topsoil and get that all squared away. The big issue that he's having has to do with the power company, and the power company is telling him they can't do the work until they get with us. And so finally I got the contact information from him. We're going to schedule a meeting with Dominion and just say, what do you need from us so that we can get this right for this gentleman? Because he's done nothing he didn't ask for any of this. So we're working with him. He's got my direct phone number, so we'll absolutely get to the bottom of that.
Thanks.
Okay, it seems like all my colleagues have been keeping you very busy up in the northern part of the county. I have a question for you, and I want to thank you for your efforts on Sherwood and Adams Court there, and hopefully the signs and everything have all been put back in. When you said you had a $2.2 million hit on your budget, I remember a few years ago when we had to give money back when we didn't have the snow removal. Remember I said, oh, Kyle, can we apply that money to something else in the county? And you're like, oh, that money's already gone to other parts of the state. So in a situation like this, do we then take money from other parts of the state that haven't had the inundation of flooding and like we have up here?
That is the hope, and that's what we're working through right now. If it is over a certain amount, we can submit it to our central office, and there may be an opportunity to get some money back for some of these larger projects. A smaller pipe replacement, like say on Sherwood, is probably not going to qualify. But then you've got your slope failures like Bells Hill, Brook Road, out past Crow's Nest. Some of those are upwards of $600,000 to $700,000.
Okay.
Each. So there may be an opportunity to get some money back for some of that, absolutely.
Okay.
And that may put me less in the hole.
Okay, because basically that impacts your whole budget for the rest of the fiscal year.
Absolutely. And winter is still coming.
Right. Okay, does anybody have any other questions? We really appreciate you coming and giving us an update, and congrats on your new position.
No new position.
Oh.
Still assistant residency administrator.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, now we'll have presentations by the public. Please remain courteous and respectful to members of the audience and to the board. If you are here to speak about one of this evening's public hearings, please hold those comments until the 7 o'clock session. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. Speak slowly and clearly into the microphone and begin by stating your name and address. Please refer to the light on the podium to monitor your time. Green indicates the start of your remarks. Yellow indicates that you have 1 minute to summarize your comments, and red obviously means that your time is up. I do not have any speaker cards, so is there anyone in the chambers that wishes to address the board? No one? Okay. With that, we'll close the public comment period. Next, we have reports of board members.
Ms. Shelton?
Ms. Shelton?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay, thank you. I get to go first today. Thank you very much. I had the wonderful job of going out last Friday out on Lake Mooney and inspecting the kayaks to make sure that, we're providing good kayaks to our citizens. In truth, there was a staff day, and I think 10 of us went out there and just had a lovely day kayaking. And I got to spend some time with some of our instructors and staff, and it was just really awesome. And I really want to thank you, Mr. Foley, and all the staff that provided that, because that was a good way to spend some use or lose time, and also for me to learn how to kayak. But I've been spending most of my time dealing with broadband. Broadband is absolutely critical to economic development. All the businesses know it, EDA knows it, we know it, all our citizens know it, our children know it. And that's why I've been focusing on that. And I wanted to bring that up today is because there are opportunities always for us to provide capabilities that are not government funded. And you never know if you're going to have enough money. I mean, I would rather spend our money on roads, but I really do understand the need for broadband as well. And so I want to thank the citizens of the Marble Point area and beyond, a little bit beyond that, and all the work that they've been doing behind the scenes to conduct a survey, to understand what the take rates would be, what are the capabilities, and finding some solutions on their own. And so I think that's a really important thing for us to do, because I agree with my citizens that we need to have broadband, and we don't need 10.1. By the way, that's the slowest one you could have, but we need something that's valuable, because I too would like to have a doorbell that I can remotely control and see who stole my UPS package. So that's it, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Snellings?
Thank you. Real briefly, as everybody knows, I missed the last meeting. September was a difficult month for the Snellings family. My mother fell at 94 years old and broke her arm. She's doing quite well, by the way. But I want to thank Fire and Rescue. The folks at Berea, Station 12, did just an outstanding job. They were there in about 4 minutes of the call. They stabilized her very quickly. My mother's hard of hearing, but they were able to communicate with her and found out where the pain was and what was wrong, and just did an outstanding job. And I can tell the folks in Stafford County, you've got a great fire and rescue department. These folks are dedicated to what they do, and believe me when I tell you, they do it right. So, Chief, thank you, and thank your entire department. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Mr. Cavalier?
Thank you. If we could please remove item 3 from the consent agenda. I see that the Stafford Education Association has a campaign going on right now. It's called No If, Ands, and Buts, or Buts, to get all the school employees a 5% raise. Well, I certainly agree that it's a worthy goal. The fact remains that our teachers are still over 10% under the national average. I want this board to make it a legislative priority, which we will discuss a bit later in the meeting, to tell the General Assemblies to get our teachers to the national average. I spoke to Delegate Thomas on Saturday, and he said it was not likely this year. However, I think we need to start this movement now, and I'm committed to get them the double-digit raises they deserve. Not saying that will happen this year, but I think that we need to start the movement here like it's been done in other states. I feel I have to address the debacle that is referred to as the September 18th meeting. I won't even vote to approve the minutes of the sham of a meeting that occurred. That's why I pulled it from the consent agenda. A portion of the meeting was orchestrated and rehearsed with the Director of Planning. For the chairman to allow one member the latitude and complete domination of the meeting was unprecedented. And I know the chairman consulted the county attorney, but the attorney does not control the meeting. She only advises. The chairman has control. That control was visibly demonstrated when the chairman allowed a vote on a very important issue that resulted in a minority of the full board making a decision that may result in more problems. The chairman disregarded the request for a deferral on the matter, even after I said that I had just spoken to Mr. Snellings, who just explained his situation last week, on the phone, and he specifically stated he wanted the matter deferred so that he would have the opportunity to vote on it. The resultant tie in the deferral vote meant that it failed, and the original motion was then considered. The chairman knew that with Mr. Snellings absent because of a family emergency, his mother fell, on that day, and also she knew that Mr. Dudenheffer was going to abstain, he had previously stated that position, that then the result would be the motion passing with only 3 votes, which she knew she had before the meeting even started. The discourtesy and disrespect shown by the chairman for her vice chairman is appalling. Both current and former supervisors have told me they have never seen such a spectacle. With all this and more in mind, I call for Ms. Baumke to immediately step down as chairman. That concludes my remarks.
Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Ms. Very quickly and very shortly, which is amazing for me, I attended the fire graduation ceremony last week, and it was a very moving experience, and it was great to see new members of our fire and rescue people come on board. The reason why I have spent the time on this board trying to help our police, our fire, and our EMT people is because they give to our community a needed service, and that was made very clear to me the following day, as similar to Mr. Snellings and a family member who got injured, and thanks to the Sheriff's Department, and in particular the Engine 1 day shift, which is Lieutenant James Ferguson, Master Tech Joshua Thompson, and Technician Stephen Henneman, and then Medic 12 day shift, Paramedic Teresa Gamlin, and Technician Mauricio Ching Jr. We got the care and attention we needed for a family member of mine, and the professionalism and the excellence that they showed was just amazing. And as I said, this is one of the reasons why I spend a great amount of time supporting them is because they support us, and they support this community, and they deserve all the praise they can get. And that concludes my remarks.
Mr. Dudenheffer.
Thank you. As I stated a little while ago, I'm having a town hall meeting tomorrow night at Park Ridge Elementary School, starting at 7 o'clock. Stafford staff and VDOT staff will be on hand. The main topic will be the stormwater, the sinkholes, the drainage issues that we're having now in the Garrisonville district. And anyone who would like to attend can attend and participate. The people that are there are the people that will be able to answer questions. I will warn, though, that a wholesale acceptance by the county that we're going to fix all the problems is not in the cards, okay? We're not, that is not going to be there if anyone thinks that that's going to be there. But certainly an exchange of ideas and an explanation of the positions of the various parties will be discussed at length. And my only choice, or my only question or request, is that people come and be civil in what we discuss and how we discuss it. We just had an infrastructure committee meeting before this, and we presented the work, the last 9 months' worth of work, on a road study that we started and was first presented at our offsite in January. The staff and Mr. Dayton, who has been working on transportation issues and transportation projects in Stafford for a long time, has taken the bull by the horns on this, and our objective is to, and I think I've said this in the past, is to come up with a list that can be defended as objectively as possible of the major road issues in Stafford. Those road issues are countless, and I don't want to give anyone the impression that just because we create this lengthy, comprehensive, objective list that we're going to be able to fix all those problems. But we certainly will know what they are, and we will be working after this list is massaged to come up with some kind of a funding strategy. And we will be reaching out to the public, asking for input on what we need to do, how important is this issue really to you, and we will be working on that through the winter. The list is going to be published on the county website, and I ask people to look at it to know that this is just the first cut at trying to use that objective data to come up with that list. As I look at it, there are roads that I drive on that aren't really high on the list that I think should be there. I think every board member here would agree that there are road projects in their area that didn't get rated as highly. And that's the whole objective of trying to come up with an objective way of looking at our road issues, is so that one board member doesn't win out over another board member based on the road that they drive on every day. I drive on 610 every day. I think that is the most important road in Stafford. But this study showed that it isn't. And I'm willing to work my way through and understand that some very educated, some very compassionate and thorough people have done the analysis. So we will be working on that. I ask anyone who thinks that we don't spend a considerable amount of time on transportation and realizing how complicated this subject is, to please go onto the county website and participate if possible. Reach out to a board member or reach out to the county staff with your input as to things that you think we may have missed on the list. We look at crash data, we look at tickets, we look at some subjective information, we look at fatalities. We've tried to look at as many different ways that we can objectively slice and dice the road issues in Stafford County. They are massive. I'm not saying anything that I don't think anyone listening to me today doesn't believe. But you have to start by coming up with a plan, and that's my objective, the objective of this board through the winter and probably into the spring, to come up with a plan. And I ask everyone to kind of keep an eye out for it. We obviously had a bad week this week in Stafford County in transportation when the I-95 shuts down on three successive days this week, and it just shuts down traffic throughout the entire county. It's unacceptable, and I think we need to continue to work to solving as many of them as we can. Mr. Cavalier just said that it stated that I abstained from a vote that dealt with the cemetery ordinance that is being presented in the county, and I didn't make an explanation of why I did that and why I will continue to do that, but the ordinances that are being reviewed and the various planning commission movement, the votes on all the actions of the board took place last year before I was on the board. And the Justice Department, who can be tenacious at times, is in the process of reviewing, and actually they've had a complaint which is going to require substantial amounts of county legal issues or our legal staff spending with it. Who knows where the Justice Department's going to take it, but since I didn't have a position or did not take a stand or be involved with all the studies and the work that was done, I plan on abstaining from any participation in this until the Justice Department investigation is complete. I'm not taking a side and saying what the county did was right or what the complaints are or whatever. I just feel that it's not appropriate for me to participate in this until this complete complaint has been resolved to the satisfaction of justice or the legal system. So that's my reason for doing that, and I'll continue to do that. So thank you.
Mrs. Maurer?
So I met with Girl Smarts, which is an organization that is empowering young women in our school systems, and I wanted to give Diana Flett another shout out for an incredible program that she has within our school systems to empower young women. We are looking at, I work for G Cubed, which has also a program, Extraordinary Young Minds in the School System, and we're looking at doing some partnership there. And it's really important that we get involved at the younger ages to ensure that our kids are empowered to speak their mind, say their piece, and get involved in county and community issues. Also took a VRE tour, looked at several of their stations, got more in-depth information. There's been this fiscal cliff that we've talked about with VRE. Their infrastructure is not keeping up with the funding that is available. And so although we have made significant progress in ensuring that funding is there with the latest round of gas tax, which unfortunately hurt the amount of money we're going to get here for our transportation projects. But I'm happy to report at the last couple of meetings of the VRE that fiscal cliff is looking less and less as we move forward. Also happy to say, week of no rain. I didn't think it was possible. But with all of the flooding issues that we have had, both in my district and around the county, as we heard from VDOT, the rain that we have had over the last 6 months, I've heard that we've had a 500-year rain, a 100-year rain, 2 10-year rains. I'm almost wondering if we should support building an ark, because it really has been devastating, not only on the infrastructure here in Stafford County, but individual homeowners who have suffered hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of loss. And I hope we're on the other side of this. But again, we need to really start looking at our stormwater management. And we also need to be looking at our development processes and whether or not the 10-year rain standard should be the standard that we continue forward with. Given the fact that we've had so many horrific rains over the last couple of months, in just months, we need to continue to look at that. And I know staff's coming back with some stormwater options for us to review. I want to address the meeting. First and foremost, I want to dispel the myth that it was orchestrated between me and the planning department. I personally did all of the research and came up with all of my questions out of respect for staff. I gave them a heads up and I let them know it was coming because I didn't want them to be blindsided. But as far as orchestrating it with them, absolutely incorrect. I can assure you that not a single email was exchanged between me and the planning staff in this orchestration. But secondly, this board is guided by a set of bylaws. And I read the bylaws very carefully before I said what I said and did what I did. And this is an important issue, and we are not limited by our bylaws and the time. And so as much power as the chairman may have, they really don't have any. And when it comes to the bylaws, and we're getting ready to talk about the bylaws, and maybe we want to limit debate in the bylaws or put forward a procedure in order to limit that debate. But we have gone a long way over the last several years, and it was even in our last several discussions on the bylaws about limiting the ultimate power of the chairmanship, because to stifle debate is just not fair. And it also doesn't allow for the full information flow that is necessary when making legislative decisions. There was every opportunity for every other board member to say their piece, and I came prepared, and I was prepared to say mine, because this is a very important issue, and it's very important to the Rock Hill District. And so I just want to thank Ms. Baumke for allowing me the opportunity as an elected representative of this board, one of 7, because there have been times where people have tried to shut me down before. And so it takes a lot of energy to sit and listen to me sometimes. I understand that. However, we are all equal members of this board, and I appreciate the time and energy that all of my board members took to go through that very long process. And I apologize if it ruffled any feathers, but I felt that what I needed to be said was said, and I will not make any apologies for putting forth as much information as was necessary on that particular topic. So with that, Madam Chair, I conclude my remarks. Oh, one more item. I would like to remove item 4 from the agenda, please. Consent.
All right.
And Ms. Baumke.
Okay. After a very short stay at the county picnic, I went out with Mr. Cohen out to the Bethlehem Primitive Baptist Church, the unveiling of the new historical marking out there. It was a great church service. In fact, our special friend Frank White actually played the role of the pastor from 1961. And as you know, the church survived what they refer to as bits and pieces. They kept that church alive all these years. Dr. Fairfax from the State Department of Conservation and Resources, she was on the committee for the selection, and she came up and congratulated the community. It was just really cool when we went outside, and after the unveiling of the marker, they released 3 doves, and they had a special ceremony. And they said that that represented the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then they let the doves out. So it was a really, really neat ceremony. I also attended the International Day of Peace that was hosted by Rappahannock Rotary in Fredericksburg. And they were promoting peace and civility in our community. Gary Skinner was there from Spotsylvania, Councilman Tim Duffy, former Mayor Lawrence Davies, Fred Rankin, who was the former hospital chairman, and many Rotarians. Dick Ayers was the guest speaker, and some of you might know Mr. Ayers. He used to work very closely with the Sheriff Department, and he's worked all over the nation on this topic. And you know, the question was, is this a one-and-done forum? We broke out into different groups, and everybody, we had a speaker at each table, and they stood up and talked about maybe things in our community where we could do a better job. So in conflict, you know, resolution in certain situations. So they've decided with the Rotary motto, they're going to bring this back and open it up to the bigger community, not just for Stafford, but for the entire region. So you might hear more about that. I gave each of you, or Donna Kraus did, at your seat is a flyer. It's called Ellie's Elves and Payne Trucking, and we have our Stafford logo on here, as well as Fire and Rescue and our Sheriff's Department. And I want to tell you, this little idea came from a germ that somebody reached out to me the other night and said, do you know anybody with a truck? And I said, well, I know Danny Payne. So before we knew it, Payne Trucking, and specifically Danny Payne, has agreed to drive a truck down to Florence, North Carolina that is hopefully full of all the supplies that are on this list. And basically, Brandy Quick and Joni Waza put this whole thing together, and on the donation event is October 5th through 7th from 9 to 4 at the Lowe's on Route 17. And there's a complete list. I'll be sharing it on my Facebook page. If some of you could do that as well, that would be great. And we're hoping to send all these supplies down to North Carolina to help our friends out down there. Also, I attended the Recruit Academy 12 at Stafford High School. Thank you for the fire chief and your staff for the ceremony. It was very well done. We had 20 graduates who all completed the program. Their guest speaker that night was retired Navy SEAL Andrew Stump, and he was really great. He had spent 2 hours actually with all the recruits earlier in the day, but it was really interesting. What he said is that, you know what, you've got to really work really hard deep down in your own soul, and don't rely on Instagram and all the social media out there and Facebook, because he said all that is a false sense of reality, which I thought was really good. I also got an email yesterday from the library system. They're unveiling a brand new internet site, and it's going to have a fresh look. If you want to check that out, it's librarypoint.org. And hopefully this is going to save on their staff time and the requirements that they need to update and maintain the website. Lastly, I want to mention that congratulations to all the county employees who received their milestone awards. It was really fun. They had a luau, and everybody wore leis, and it was very well done. So thank you for leading us in that effort, Mr. Foley. And then lastly, I'd just like to say I appreciate your opinion, Mr. Cavalier, on what you spoke about regarding the last meeting. And I would just like to say that, you know, there is nothing in our bylaws that allow me to shut down a board member. And I did walk over to the county attorney and asked her if I had that ability. And, you know, in looking back, you know, none of us are perfect chairmen. You know, perhaps I could have called for a recess and we could have had some discussion, as well as any of my colleagues could have also asked for a recess. It was not a very fun night for any of us. It was all very uncomfortable. We were delving into a matter that some people are very passionate about, and I did not even know what was going to be said until about 15 or 20 minutes before the meeting. So I would like to say on that note, I will not be stepping down, but I appreciate your comments. And with that, I would like to ask Ms. McClendon, do you have any a report for us today?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have no report at this time.
Thank you. And next, the report of the county administrator.
Madam Chair, we just have the construction report. Director of Public Works, Jason Towery, is going to give that.
Good afternoon, Jason Towery, Director of Public Works. Apologize in advance that our resident construction expert Brian isn't here today. He had a bit of a family emergency, but he did brief me on these items, so I'll do my best to bring you up to speed. Let me. Got it. Thank you. Start off with fire station number 14 here. We are still projecting this project to be complete in spring of next year. We do have a couple time extensions that we're looking at right now due to some of the ongoing weather delays we've had. But if you go out there right now, you would see that some of the masonry work is coming up now. Some of the walls are coming up on the sides of the building there. Garrisonville Road widening. This project is all but complete. There's a couple minor punch list items that we're still working with the contractor on completing. But we do expect that these will be finished in short order and that we'll be able to close this project out. And then, of course, Ms. Maurer, staff does plan to go ahead and submit a request or application to VDOT for the permissive left turn signal there at Center Street. So hopefully we'll be able to get that issue resolved moving along. Brook Road, if you go out there nowadays, you'll notice that the good section of the road there is shut down. So that is intended to be in place through the end of January at this point. Of course, anything we can do to move that along quicker, we will, but as we all know, weather has continued to be a struggle. We're finally getting into some clear weather here. So we do hope to have that reopened by the end of January. And of course, we'll keep you up to speed on that. Belmont Ferry Farm Trail, Phase 4. Right now, we still are projecting a completion date of September of next year. If you go down there, right now, you would see that the entire trail area has been cleared and rough graded, and there's been some of the pipes have been installed. We did experience a couple setbacks when the river came up out of the banks there, but it is moving along quite well. So that's exciting news.
Mr. Towery, on that one,
Yeah.
since the trail is going to be on the other side of River Road, is that going to be built up? I mean, obviously not high enough for major floods, but, because you can't really see when you're on River Road, the construction of the path down below.
Are you asking, is the
Right.
trail going to come up? It's pretty much, my understanding is pretty much going to be at grade there where it is right
Okay.
now.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Poplar Road, Mountain View Road intersection improvements. If you were to go out there now, you would see that the utilities have begun and actually completed most of their relocations. This project was advertised previously, but the bids came in high, so we are planning to re-advertise that this fall in hopes to have a more competitive bidding season there. So we're looking for that one to come up here soon. Juggins Road improvements. The Verizon and Columbia Gas are continuing to complete their relocations. We right now are anticipating a project advertisement in December. We're trying to wrap up the final bit of design. We are looking to try and increase the speed on that project a little bit and possibly add an incentive to the project to ensure the completion date by July 1st of next year. As you know, the school system is opening a little bit earlier next year, so we're well aware of that, and we're trying to keep that project moving along at a quick pace. Sure.
Jason, so is the school still scheduled to open on next school year, the fall, whether it's August next year, I believe, so the July 1st date would be advantageous, I would believe.
Right, and that's what we're projecting right now, being able to hit that date. Obviously, we're well aware of the schools, need to have that road open in time, but we are, and that's why we're trying to speed up some of the bidding on this and get it out sooner than December. Right now, we're looking at December. We're working with VDOT to see if we can get that moving along a little bit quicker.
Okay, just can you keep me apprised on that one?
Absolutely,
Thank you,
absolutely
sir.
will. Route 1 at Courthouse Road intersection improvements. The right-of-way acquisition process continues on. We have 29 parcels that are impacted, and we currently have offer letters out to 14 landowners, and we are continuing to work with those landowners who are impacted by this project. Berea Church Road, the public hearing that was held this past summer, we've gotten all of that information over to VDOT for their approval on the public hearing that was held in Mr. Snelling's district. The right-of-way is expected to impact approximately 20 parcels, and we do anticipate having those plans to VDOT in late October for approval and then continue moving forward. Belmont Ferry Farm Trail Phase 6. The survey work is ongoing right now, as well as the environmental and historical investigations. We're working with VDOT and hoping to get them a set of updated plans in December, after which we would be looking to move towards a public hearing after the first of the year at some point to start talking about the design with the public. And I apologize. Onville Road, okay, I'm sorry, yep, I missed a slide on mine. Onville Road sidewalk improvements, of course, we talked about this just briefly in Infrastructure Committee today. The original project budget amount of $550,000 has increased now because of the 500-foot tie-in to the existing sidewalk. That's the segment that we originally anticipated VDOT had within their Onville Road their Onville Road intersection project. So we're working to identify the additional cost there, but it does look like that project budget amount is definitely increasing. And I had 3 more here that I will go ahead and just give you a verbal update on. I'm sorry, I'm not sure how they didn't make the presentation, but the Wayside Sewer Interceptor, this is right along here in the Wayside area as you drive up and down Route 1. This project is intended to provide better sewering capacity to the courthouse area. The clearing out there that you may or may not have seen through the Wayside recently started about 2 weeks ago, and right now we anticipate having that complete and ready for operation in June of next year. And then additionally, we also have a number of projects, what we have termed the Lower Accokeek Pump Station Interceptor and Force Main. Again, this is all in anticipation of some of the growth within the courthouse area. That's ongoing. We do expect to bring those designs forward for bidding and to go towards construction in the spring of next year. And then finally down along Route 3 in Mr. Cohen's district, the Claiborne Run Parallel Force Main. If you drive Route 3 heading east towards King George, you'll see some construction activity beginning down there over the next few weeks as we're working to install a new parallel force main down along Route 3. I'd be happy to answer any questions that may have at
And
this time.
Mrs. Shelton?
Mr. Towery?
Sure.
Are we enacting an incentive clause, or are we adding an incentive clause?
We're in discussions right now with VDOT about how that might be done. We don't have a contract yet. We're still looking at adding it in potentially too.
Okay. Would you mind when keeping track of the costs related to that incentive and briefing us so that way we can encapsulate all the costs, the total costs related to moving those times up for the schools?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. Thank you, Mr. Towery, for that great report and update. Okay, may I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda that includes proposed resolution R 18-250 minus items 3, 4, and 5?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I did.
Okay. No problem.
Thank you. I don't think I stated that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, any discussion? All right, cast your vote. Tally the vote. Motion passes unanimously. Item number 3, Mr. Cavalier.
As stated in my remarks, I won't be supporting these minutes as approved for a variety of reasons, and I think I stated those clearly, but the resultant impact of that is the continued DOJ investigation, which I personally, look forward to, but I think the others on this board won't.
Motion to approve?
Okay, I have a motion and
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Mr. Snellings.
Madam Chairman, as I was not at this meeting, I'll abstain from the vote.
Okay. All right. Any other comments? Okay, with that, please cast your vote. Tally the vote. Motion passes 5 with 1 nay and 1 abstention. Item number 4, Mrs. Mauer.
Yes, I have a question on item number 4. It was $646,490 for the Stern PDR easement. Is that for both halves, or is that just the county's allotment? I know that we get grant funds, so my question is do those grant funds flow through us, or do the grant funds go directly to the title company, and this is the full amount of our portion?
I'll have to ask Kathy from Planning and Zoning to answer that question. She works with the program specifically.
Hello, Kathy Baker, Assistant Director of Planning and Zoning. This particular grant was different than what we've done in the past. In the past, we have pass-through funds that come through. So we, at closing, the county would provide the fee up front to the to the seller. And under the Navy's program, they send a separate check. So the 646 is just the county's portion. And the Navy sent their check separately directly to the closing agent, so they received the full
So the total amount was 1.3 million then?
Yes.
And then how many rights did that extinguish? And I I apologize, I know you weren't prepared to do a report on this. This was a consent agenda item, so if you don't have that off the top of your
I
head.
believe it was about 55,
About 55 for 1.2 million,
1.3 million.
1.3, and the county giving 650,000. All righty, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Are you moving?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'm not going to support this. I've talked about PDR funds before. I think we have bigger fish to fry, namely transportation, and so I will defer to my other colleagues to make a motion.
As it's in my district, I move for approval.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a substitute motion that we pass this, but that we refer our financial policy on PDRs to the Finance and Budget Committee for review.
Well, I'll go ahead and second Mark's motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Oh, right. Yes, correct. Any discussion on the substitute motion?
I just think that there is enough concern about how much money we've spent into that fund, and there are enough board members who are not happy with the amount of money we're spending there, considering the amount of money we're spending out of our general fund and our end-of-year money with the transportation issues we have, and I would like to see it reviewed. I wasn't on the board when this policy was created on the Finance Committee.
So I believe that this, and Mr. Foley, you would have to answer this. I believe, wasn't this a PDR from within the last 3 years? Do we know how old this is? I know it's not a recent one. This was not part of,
Madam Chair, I'll probably have to ask for the specifics. I think it's been going on a while. My understanding is really, I didn't understand it to be opposition to approval of this, but reconsideration of the policy going forward. But
Going
I would-
forward, exactly. And I don't care when it was, that's not relevant to
okay.
me.
Any more discussion on the substitute motion?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I disagree with Mr. Dudenheffer, as he knew I would. I think this is a good program, but here we are trying to change policies in the middle of the budget year. If we're going to change budget policies, it seems to me that should be done in conjunction with the new budget year.
Madam-
So I will oppose the motion.
Ms. Shelton?
I agree with Mr. Snellings that I support the way that we're doing it. I am always interested in us having a discussion about the way that we want to change things, but changing them at this time is inappropriate.
Okay, Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, I'm going to vote against this as well. We had a rather full discussion since I've been on the board, so that means in the last 6-7 months about this program. And to me, it's sort of just a continuation of the same issue being raised, that there are some people who are against the program and some people are in favor of the program. And quite honestly, I think we've slaughtered this cow enough, and quite honestly, that we just need to support this program the same way we are trying to support other programs.
Madam Chairman.
Okay, yes,
I,
Mr. Dudenheffer?
I'm not interested in changing how we're distributing the money, and we've agreed to distribute it to this point. But what I do believe is that we need to go forward, at least looking at where we're spending this money. The public needs to know that we're spending over $600,000 a year out of our general fund to pay the debt service on Crow's Nest, which is another program for saving money. And we're continuing to take money away from our transportation and our schools to put money into this program. And I'm asking, I think it's important for the county to know if we're going to change the policy going forward in developing the budget for next year. And that would be a reason for discussing it now, before they have a budget and we have a discussion maybe in February.
Okay,
Madam Chairman, before
Yes.
we vote, will you please explain what I'm going to vote for so I do it correctly?
okay, Mr. Dudenheffer, can you please restate your substitute motion?
The motion is to approve the allocation of the fund as stated in the agenda item, but that we also move forward with at least a discussion about modifying the program through the Finance and Budget Committee for future consideration.
Okay, Mr. Snellings?
Let me make sure I understand, Mr. Dudenheffer. So your motion is to approve the funding as, for this this
Yes.
parcel, to send it to FAB for them to review the program,
Yes. And
but
make
not to stop the program in this fiscal year.
No, and not to discuss any decisions that have been made so far, just for the future.
In the future, you mean after the new fiscal year?
Yes, and for the next budget cycle.
Okay, then I'll support the
And
motion.
to correct something Mr. Cohen said, yes, we had a discussion, but I believe that in that discussion, we agreed back several months ago that we would review the policy going forward, but that we approved what was happening in the past with the money that was already allocated. So that was the way that thing worked, and I expected us to have that discussion, and I'm asking now that we do.
As long as your motion does not disrupt the current program in this fiscal year,
No, none.
Okay.
I will support the motion.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes, my point was, quite honestly, what we asked staff to do was to look at it and bring it to us, which I believe Ms. Baker has been doing. We have asked staff to explore the different ways to reform it, which is what Ms. Shelton has asked for, which I believe staff is doing, and by talking to members of the Ag Commission, they are doing that. So everything that we agreed to do before is in the mix, so that's going to come forward anyways. I'm going to continue to be against this because we have set in motion efforts to reform by people who are in favor of the program, and I'm leery of another effort going to one subcommittee, of which there are certain members who are on and other members don't get a vote on, to look at this yet again. And we've looked at it. Let staff do their job and bring it back when they were supposed to bring it back.
And I totally disagree with Mr. Cohen's analysis of what we agreed to do back at our finance meetings in the past.
Okay, Ms. Shelton, last time?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Dudenheffer, did you know that the Ag PDR Committee is now reviewing the criteria for the PDR program? I went to their meeting last week. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? And that's part of what they're doing right now.
They
Yeah, but
don't
I
make
think-
policy when it
Yeah, I
comes to
think what
this. We
Mr.
make policy.
Dudenheffer is referring to is financial policy. So I appreciate what all my colleagues have to say. I'm not going to support this because we are voting later on our bylaws, and I feel that this should come to the entire board, not just a specific committee. So, and I understand and think that we should start working on our financial policy as it relates to this, but I want it to come to the full board, not just to the FAB committee. Yeah, but it won't immediately.
Madam
won't
Chair, just to confirm or clarify, there is no staff effort underway to evaluate and bring something back to you on the finance policies for funding this program, although the other policies are under consideration, as was stated on the Ag Committee and so forth. But they are two different processes.
Okay, so if you would please cast your vote for the substitute motion. Tally the vote. Okay, that motion passes 4-3. Okay, so staff will work on that. All right, the next item is item number 5. That would be proposed resolution R18-244. And I had some questions in this contract as it relates to our volunteers. So I was reading this, and I've talked to Mr. Foley about this, and I wanted Mr. Cardella's perspective, because these annual physicals are specifically for all of our career firefighters. And I went back and I read the what we refer to as the federal, the fire standards as it relates to 1582. And I just wanted to know, what do we do for our volunteers? Do we do anything? What baseline do we have with them? So if you could address this, Chief Cardello, I would appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members. The item that we're asking you to pass is to renew the contract for the physicals for our career employees. And I know you had questions about the mental health aspects and also how it affects our volunteers. Currently, there is no provision in this, or currently, we do not do anything for our volunteers. There is something in the county code that allows us to, and we're researching whether this contract, the language in that contract would allow us to do so. With that said, this issue will be a pretty involved issue that I support 100%. We need to take a look at it, but it's something we need to do we need to look at it separately.
Okay. Do we require our volunteers to have annual physicals?
We do not.
We do not, okay.
I believe that we should, but
But
so I
we do
support
not.
that.
Okay. All right, Mrs. Mauer.
So does that affect our insurance rates at all? How does that, could our workman's comp go down if we are requiring it seems like that would be kind of a risk mitigation.
Madam Chair, I think that's one of the very important issues we need to look at carefully. If we require physicals, what are the implications for our volunteer force? And what are the implications in terms of liability? And how would that affect our insurance if we were to make a change? And so I think the question's a good one. Is this a benefit we should offer? And how would the system react to it? But also, what would the implications be for the county? So we think it's a good question. We just really need to do, I think, a
Sure.
thorough job on it.
Okay.
We
Okay.
certainly need to proceed if we can with the career physicals, and in the meantime, we'll look at what the options might be otherwise.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you staying here and answering this question. And if you could do more research and work with Mr. Foley, that would be great.
Yes, ma'am.
And work with our volunteers and.
Of course.
Of course, that's understood. And then bring that information back to the board when appropriate.
Got it.
Okay? All right, great, thank you. All right, with that, motion to approve R18-244.
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, cast your vote, please. Tally the vote. Okay, motion passes unanimously. All right, we have one item of unfinished business, which is a continuation of the discussion about revision to the board's bylaws. This item was discussed by the board at its meetings on September 4th and also September 18th. Ms. McClendon.
Madam Chair, I'm going to provide the overview on this, and
Okay?
the county attorney will be able to answer specific questions about the amendments to the bylaws. This item is placed before you for action after recommendations from the Bylaws Committee and review by the board over the last two meetings. The bylaws before you include changes suggested over the last two meetings that had consensus by the board, with the exception of a few items that I'll cover specifically in just a moment. Those items were items related to how the committees will function. So I'd like to just do a recap of what is in the bylaws and the changes that we believe that you all supported, and I'll also highlight through that a couple matters which I think you all will need to make a final decision on. I think the majority of it there has been consensus by the board on. The other items unrelated to the committee process, I believe that they have all been answered and resolved through the process of the last two meetings. Regarding the bylaw changes for board committees, just a recap, all matters, based on the changes that are incorporated, all matters for consideration will first be introduced on the board's regular agenda as new business or on the consent agenda. After the initial review, items will receive one of the following actions as determined by the majority of the board, either moving on to unfinished business or the consent agenda, or referred to a work session or a standing or ad hoc committee. One of the questions that was raised was whether informational and update items would continue to go directly to committees or whether they would come to the full board for consideration. That item got some discussion at the last meeting. There seemed to be consensus, or majority, I should say, that those items would come to the board first. So in the bylaws that you have attached, Section 5.5 clarifies that by saying that informational and update items will come to the full board. That doesn't mean that the board can't then refer them to a committee for more discussion or consideration, but that is the way the bylaws are drafted in front of you at this point. Marcia, if you could go to the next slide. Regarding the standing and ad hoc committees of the board, one decision that you made was that all previous standing committees will remain in place. And what we have done actually is identify what those committees are, because the previous bylaws actually didn't say what the committees were. So that's been just clarified. But there was a question about eliminating the committees altogether, and the board has not decided to do that. However, the standing and ad hoc committee agenda items will be established by the board. They will come here first and then be referred to the committees. After review by the committee, all agenda items will go directly to the full board as unfinished business with a recommended action, or, and this was an addition from the last meeting, they will go to the consent agenda if the subject is going to go before a public hearing of one of your appointed bodies. So they won't have to come back to the board first. They can go straight to the consent agenda for final approval. Standing and ad hoc committees will be held in the board chambers. There was a clarification that at a minimum, we would have audio recordings for all of the committee meetings. Again, if there are board work sessions, we'll have to have full minutes of those items according to state law. But that does clarify some of the issues related to transparency. Work sessions of the board, items will be established by the board again. After review, those items will go directly to unfinished business or the consent agenda, and minutes will be taken. There was a question about the effective date of changes of anything that is revised regarding the committee process, and that is to be determined by the board today. So two issues that seem to be unresolved. One was the effective date of committee changes, and the other was the status of informational items and whether they'd come directly to the board. As I've mentioned, that item has been incorporated so that they will come to the board first. We have left a blank in the resolution of adoption for the effective date of those bylaws changes related to committee process. With that, Madam Chair, I think we're prepared to answer any questions you may have.
All right, any questions for Ms. McClendon or for Mr. Foley? Mr. Dudenheffer.
I had called Tom earlier and asked that there be two separate resolutions. One that refers to the items that were approved by the bylaws committee, and in another ordinance or resolution that was the proposed committee change resolutions, because I would like to vote for one and not the other. So it's going to require now that I make a complicated substitute motion because it doesn't have what I had requested.
Okay, Mrs. Maurer.
Let me just, and Mark, you and I worked on this together, and one of the things that we left kind of up in the air when we had our committee meeting was how we were going to address the committees. And part of our committee meeting was that it had already been decided at a previous work session that guidance on how we were going to determine our committees was going to come from our chair and vice chair. Which, has been massaged considerably. So my impression of our bylaws committee was that our work was not necessarily complete unless, of course, your motion is to leave the committee language all as is.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Foley.
And the county attorney may want to comment on this, but I do think that if it's the intent of the majority of the board to remove all items related to the functioning of the committees, I think that can be done through a motion. And if that's supported, I think we can just revise that for final
Can I ask
action.
one more question?
Rashida did have some thoughts, I think, on how she drafted that.
Is this going to be passed by a majority vote or a two-thirds majority for a bylaws change?
Bylaws amendments requires a two-thirds vote.
Thank you.
But with regards to the committee portion of it, because the changes affect different areas of the agenda, the bylaws, it was hard to just pull those sections out for a separate resolution. So if the board would like to encapsulate just the committee part of it as being unagreeable, that could be made via a separate motion. If we need to go back through, we can pull all the affected sections out because it does interweave throughout the bylaws.
Okay. Mr. Cavalier.
One committee, I see 4 committees as standing in the current rewritten bylaws right here. One that I think was left out is the joint schools, because the school board has that same committee, so that how could that not be one of our standing committees? Because if they have one and we don't have one, it's not joint anymore.
The board's bylaws only addresses the committees that are only comprised of board members. That discussion and how those committees will be structured is separate outside of the board's bylaws, because this only governs how the board itself is structured.
Okay, Mrs. Mauer?
So would the Joint Schools Working Committee be similar to, let's say, the PRTC, VRE, FAMPO, those particular committees, because they're part and parcel of another construct?
They would be treated similarly. I would note that some of the committees you've referenced were required to be a part of via agreement. I don't think there's an official agreement with the schools. However, the committee itself and the agreement to be in a committee, I think, was agreed to by both boards. I know at some point the county administrator was planning to go over all of the BACCs or all of the committees of which the board has involvement in, or that the board has appointed to or created, because they are numerous, but those are outside the scope of the bylaws purely because there is membership outside the board members on those committees.
Well, and I think one of the things that we need to talk about as a board regarding the Joint Schools Committee, because the school board's been having some discussion on their side, whether it's joint schools or is it FAB on their side or the joint FAB. You know, we have a lot of redundancy on committees, so we're trying to figure out what is the best committee to have. As you know, a few people have dropped off the Joint Schools Committee because they feel that it's not productive. But everything that we talk to the schools about typically has to do with money. So do we have one committee and we call it Joint FAB and that's it, and there is no Joint Working Committee? You know, I think we need to decide on that as a board. So which way we want to go, which direction. And because there's, what ends up happening is we have an overlap of a lot of information going different directions. And it's going to be a lot easier if one group is on the same page all the time and that information gets filtered back to each individual board. Mr. Cavalier?
I'd like to make a motion for deferral until the second meeting in January for this entire issue.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Mrs. Mauer?
Madam Chair, I don't think I can support that motion for a number of reasons. Number one, what started this process was a number of cleanup items that we had in these bylaws. If we want to encapsulate the committee stuff, that might be interesting. But if we change the bylaws the second week in January, then we're back to when is the effective date of the bylaws, and do we now make it an entire year again? And so I just don't think, from a time-wise, that I can support that motion.
Mr. Snellings?
Madam Chairman, it's no secret, I've been somewhat critical of our committee system. Not that I'm against the committee system. I think it is a good system. I'm just interested in some changes in it. And I wasn't at the last meeting, but I did watch the reruns, as they say. And I noticed that one of the things that came up during the reruns was a couple board members said, well, why are we doing this now? You're sort of changing horses in midstream. Let's face it, we're 3 months away from the new year. So the suggestion was made that we defer it, pass it today, and defer implementation until 2019. I believe I heard that correctly. I'm not sure that's the best way to go. You're going to defer something 3 months out, and things can change between now and 3 months. I agree with what Mr. Cavalier said at the last meeting. It doesn't make sense to change our rules at the end of the year when we're getting ready and in 3 months to go into the new year. So I'm going to support the motion to defer until January, although I'm still committed to seeing changes in the committee system, and I think the bylaws, the way they're written now, with a couple more tweaks, I think will be there. So I'll support the motion.
Okay. Anybody have anything else? Okay, well, and it's no secret to anybody on the board that, I'm primarily in favor of work sessions. I feel that, we do a lot of the people's business up in ABC, and, I don't even like the word transparent, but I feel like everything that we're discussing is all board business. Like this big transportation plan that we just unveiled, which is enormous. Everybody was talking about transportation is the #1 issue, and then we're up in ABC and we're talking about it. And so I just feel that, we should be doing everything with work sessions, but, and that's how I feel. Mr. Snellings.
Question for the county attorney. We're still allowed to have work sessions, is that correct, on subjects that are interest, on major issues?
That's correct. The bylaws don't currently provide for work sessions, but the board can have them, and the board has been having them. There just aren't any real procedures that provide for them in the bylaws.
But the chairman and the county administrator can call for a work session on any issue, is that correct?
That's correct, Supervisor Snellings.
Thank you.
So I guess the thing here is, if we defer this to January, what's the benefit of that? And, staff needs clear direction from us of where we're going, because otherwise I think they're kind of in flux with everything.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just for point of clarification, the way the process works now, the chairs of the committees are the ones that decide what items will be on the committee agendas. And there's not a process now where the chair and vice chair of the board would say, no, that's a full work session item instead of a committee discussion. So that's the only, I think, dilemma we have in the meantime, being uncertain about this, because there's been so much discussion by the board of certain things needing to go to a full work session, and certain things may already be on a committee agenda. So at this point, we will take our direction from the committee chair as to which items are on those agendas. And that would be status quo.
Mrs. Mauer.
So one of the things that I don't like about the committee agendas is that it seems like items are being put on the agendas by the development community, especially in CEDC. It seems like stuff sneaks up on my agenda, so I will be much more cautious in the future on how those items are added to the agenda and refer them to the full board.
Yeah, so staff gets those requests, and under your current structure, by the bylaws, they would be directed to the committee. So it'll just be a matter of those committee agendas being established. And of course, we work with the chair, but we send it out to all the committee members. So if someone has a concern, I think they would talk to the committee chair, and then staff will be looking for some direction on the final agenda for committees.
Ms. Shelton.
It's also no surprise to anyone that I want the additional communications and transparency through the work sessions. And one of the reasons I like the idea of all the items coming to us, the board, to have a decision on what the committees handle is because we do have items that are not coming up. And so we do have subcommittees that vote to not bring something up to the board, which is part of the transparency. So it's not just the things that they vote to come up to the board. It's a smaller group deciding what we, the board, can adjust. And I won't support it for that reason.
Okay, I think we've had a lot of dialogue here, a lot of good discussion. And so with that, Mr. Cavalier had put forward a substitute motion to defer this till, the main motion, to defer this till January. Did you say the second meeting? Second meeting in January. Okay, so with that, cast your vote.
Tally the vote.
Tally the vote, thank you. Okay, that motion passes 4-3. So we will now defer the bylaws discussion until January, the second meeting. Okay, in our new business today, we are going to discuss the board's 2019 legislative initiatives. With us, we have the county's legislative liaison, Mrs. Julia Hammond. Ms. Hammond, welcome back. It's good to see you. And this is item number 9, the board's legislative priorities.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be back. I have a short 2-hour presentation for you. I'm just kidding. That'd be cruel and unusual.
Been around the legislature too long.
Anthony is going to be assisting since he very graciously put this entire packet together for you in the PowerPoint that we're going to go through. So, as you well know, session begins in January 9th this year. It's a 45-day session, a short session. So in theory, it should be, we should have fewer bills that we'll have to address. On the tracking charts that you get, legislators are limited on the House side as to how many they can put in. So we are hopeful also, since it is leading into an election year, that we may not have to deal with as many issues, and we can hopefully spend more time on the pressing ones that are included here for y'all. I am here now as a member of Cozen O'Connor. I forgot. Thank you, Anthony, for including that. Cozen O'Connor Public Strategies. I switched law firms, and thank you for the opportunity to serve in my new capacity to continue the work we've been doing for 5 or 4 years now. The Legislative Committee met on September 18th, and we reviewed the items in your package. As usual, they're divided into the priority initiatives, Stafford-specific issues, and then the rest of the agenda are things that have of great interest, but things that we work with others on, VACO, VML, other jurisdictions. So moving on to the priority initiatives, of which we have 5 this year. And the first one, and many of these issues came from board members, so I am happy to defer to the board member whose item it is for further explanation. And the first one being Ms. Mowers, the HOA property transfer trigger point, providing that localities may not release developer securities or bonds for a housing development until 100% of the common areas are transferred by the developer to the HOA. Yes, ma'am.
So, and this actually comes very much with the support of the Commissioner of the Revenue and the Treasurer's Office. This is a nightmare for them, as it is for the homeowners associations who unknowingly are maintaining properties that they don't own. More importantly, later on, such as in the case of Vista Woods, where we have basically dead properties. And so this doesn't just come from me, it also comes from the Treasurer's Office and the Commissioner's Revenue's Office, and he's nodding his head vigorously back there because it is a nightmare for Stafford County. But I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things that I noticed, and I believe it was with the Apple Grove neighborhood, there was supposed to be a transfer of property for a park, and it was supposed to be transferred to the county. Can we add any language? Should we keep it as narrow as HOA, or can we say until all property transfers identified within the proffer statement are complete? And I'm sorry to throw this on you at the last minute, but this was something that I noticed with Apple Grove. We were supposed to get a park, and that property transfer never happened. And we had a 1-year timeline in order to, yes. So, so I would like to expand that until all property transfers identified within the proffer statement are complete. I think that would be important as well. And I'm going to look at the Commissioner of Revenue and ask him if you're okay with that minor adjustment. Okay.
Well, we will, I'll also make sure with the county attorney's office and anyone else that there are no issues. But at this point, once approved, we will bring these to legislative services, and they'll be able to point out if there are any additional pitfalls. But to meet your needs, I don't see why we couldn't amend the legislation to include all property. All right.
Mrs.
Ma'am?
Shelton.
First one we haven't.
I would like to
Yes,
ask a
ma'am.
question, Ms. Maurer. Is this going to avoid a problem that's come up in the Quiet District where one of the HOAs is trying to sell their property?
If the HOA owns the property, no, it won't prevent that because
Okay.
they'll still own the property. What it will avoid, and this is what happened with Apple Grove, is a property transfer that doesn't happen, then gets sold for further development.
I see. Okay, okay.
All right. We have edits on the first one. The next, if there are no further questions on the first item. The next one is an annual favorite of ours, public day school funding. There's actually already, Delegate Thomas has already dropped his first bill, HB 1619, which is minor tweaks, but in essence, exactly what we were working for last year. It was the pilot project, limited to the planning district. As you will recall, we made it into the Senate budget, but not the House budget. And as you will also recall, the budget discussions were dominated by a single topic, which became very contentious at times. So I fear that our very important small pilot issue may have been caught up in some of that drama. The co-chairman of the Finance Committee, Senator Hanger, has already reached out to express support, so we're hoping if he just tacks on as a co-patron from the very beginning, this will be a lot easier path this coming year. That is not the only method. We are still looking, in Delegate Thomas and Senator Stewart leading the charge, to see if there are some other budgetary things we can do in addition to the specific code language to establish the pilot in our area. The more we talk about it, more parts of the Commonwealth become very interested in doing the same. So there may be other jurisdictions that want to, outside of our planning district, that want to take advantage of this pilot. Any questions on that one? The third item on our agenda, conditional zoning and impact fees. So this is two issues in one. The impact fee matter, Senator Stewart had two bills. They are Senate Bill 208 and Senate Bill 944. Last year, they were carried during the summer. The Senate Local Government Committee passed both. So the matters will actually be on the floor of the Senate, two different impact fee bills on the first day of session. VML, VACO, and all interested parties are doing what they can to try and get it over to the House. It's an uphill battle. A member of the board has been on that committee and knows what an uphill battle it is, but at least there is momentum, and those who don't want the impact fee bill but are pushing the second topic, we'll talk about the proffer legislation, are going to be very busy dealing with both matters.
Yes, Mr. Dudenheffer.
Had an interesting breakfast meeting here last week with Andrew. So we know that the Virginia Builders Association, who are almost infinitely powerful down in Richmond, are working on a bill to modify the proffer bill of 2016.
Yes, sir.
They are going to oppose this bill, from what I understand, pretty seriously. So that they have a lot more power in the House than they do in the Senate, but it's going to, it'll get there. At some point, we will have to make a determination of whether we support the Virginia Builders Association modification that's going to come forward. I don't even know who's going to carry the bill at this point. They're looking for someone a lot less controversial than the last group that carried it. So, but it allows, and I think I can speak to it. I was kind of held from not speaking about it for a while, but it affords a developer an opportunity to opt in or opt out based on the restrictions of 2016, which in our area, I think, at least the developers I talk to say that they didn't want it in the first place. I hear that all the time. Well, this would be their opportunity to opt out and to go back to the old rules. It also eliminates the restrictions on communication and discussion between board members and the developers, which I think board members know that if you meet with a developer and there's any inference of a proffer that would be quote unquote illegal, they can take you to court. And I mean, there's all kind of negative ramifications that happen to the county. So that is in the language, is to eliminate that, but then there's this opt-in and opt-out and some technicalities. There's also some language in it now that talks to payment of legal fees, which they acknowledge is not going to make it into their draft, but it's there to appease some of the more radical members of their committee. So I'm not sure if we use this as one of our priorities to support Richard's bill, but we ignore the fact that there's going to be a bill on the proffer bill, which in my opinion has a greater chance of passing than the impact fee bill. Whether that's a good strategy, I'd be curious to hear what you think.
I think, I agree with you that the home builders proposed legislation to amend the proffer bill in the code section has a much greater chance of passing than Senator Stewart's impact fee bills. We have done all that we can to support Senator Stewart in his efforts, and many have been in response to the concerns we have here. I believe our continued support of him in those bills does give us leverage, and we still, quite honestly, sir, because of your service, hold the high ground on the comments when it comes to proffers and impact fees. They know, and I have an update on the proffer stuff, that Stafford County's position on the matter holds weight and makes people pay attention. That being said, we had a meeting with Andrew, myself, a member of VML, and their counsel, just to talk through the issues. Jeff Harvey was very kind and gave a very detailed description of the specific points of harm in their bill, which go in line with the comments that you shared with him. And they are going to circle back a draft addressing, and they have agreed to address all 4 of the points that Mr. Harvey made. They recognize that while that bill is the most likely vehicle to have change, that there are still a lot of people who have heartburn over the last one, as you saw in the comments during the Senate Local Government Committee this summer, that a more reasonable approach on their behalf will be better received. So it's kind of an ongoing process. I don't have a draft for you we have circulated the old draft. Because of your comments, that is going to be changed. So I don't have something for you to vote on now when it comes to a position. But I do think maintaining our position, in case that goes south, we still have the position that Stafford's views on impact fees, local authority, and honestly protecting your interests against lawsuits.
And I talked to Richard. Richard's aware of he better than me is aware of the politics and how this is.
Well, and one might argue because of the strength and the movement of his this summer, it has made others more reasonable when it comes to the proffer bill and more willing to listen to the locality-specific issues.
Okay, we just need to be careful. I
Right.
mean, this could be a tricky switch at some point where we need to jump on one or the other. And since I won't be there, you will. We'll have to let, you tell us when we need to change course in the middle of the stream or something.
This one will move faster. As you know, sir, it's going to be heard in the Senate on the first day, so it'll probably be moving in the House before the proffer one
But
ever
they'll
gets
probably
there.
hold it up. I mean, it'll go over to the House, and they may send it to the committee, but Riley Ingram is they'll hold it if they know that the Virginia Builders Association have something coming forward, which either would contradict or modify or, change something that goes in it. So just because it's on the first day in the Senate doesn't mean that it'll be immediately taken up by the House.
No, I made my comment was more, we will have that vehicle and we will constantly be talking about it as we have our other one coming, and we have a version on the Senate side. So we're going to have impact fees and proffers in the House to keep everybody working together and honest, and then we know we have a more receptive Senate to the impact fee and at least a committee that was seemingly more anti-home builder. So we can do our own holding up as well.
Okay.
You know,
One last question, not directly related, but who was the senator in the Senate committee meeting who absolutely threw down the gauntlet and said development pays for itself?
Senator Bill DeStaff. He was a member of the Virginia Beach City Council.
Yeah, and then he was the one that left the meeting and didn't even stay for the
Right.
vote.
I found his comments to be the most appalling, uninformed comments of almost any legislator I've ever heard. So, and it shows the pollution that's been put into the minds of several people on this whole issue that's out there. So, okay, thanks. I wanted to know who that was. I'm tempted to write him a very detailed, long email about that subject.
We can set up a meeting for you to come and visit with him.
We'll
have to go and talk to him anyway.
So, I don't know how to get his attention. I know him, and he's. Then who was the senator down in the bottom right who was a Republican senator, but he didn't say anything, but he voted against moving the Richards bill forward?
Glenn Sturdivant, City of Richmond. And Churchville and Powhatan, he has local government experience as well. He was on the Richmond School Board.
Okay, I think we need to move on. Okay, next item.
Number 4, VRS amendments for school resource officers. The initiative is to amend the code to permit retired law enforcement officers to be hired in full-time school security positions without the loss of retirement benefits. The legislation would also seek to remove restrictions preventing part-time sheriff's deputies under the Auxiliary 2 classification from working more than 80 hours per calendar year.
Correct.
Whose was that?
Mr. Cavalier?
Mr. Cavalier.
Julia,
Yes, sir.
the second part of that one, I don't know if was the intention of this, where the first part was primarily came out of our school safety task force here and the sheriff's own initiative on his behalf to start the school protection officers in our elementary schools. And by having some sort of waiver in their VRS that would allow them, only under that exception, to serve in that capacity, that's the critical thing, because those are the people exactly who we were targeting to come into the elementary schools and do this, and it would be done at a lower rate than we would pay the deputies. Now, I'm not quite understanding the second part of your,
I will have to ask my partner in crime for clarification.
Thank you, Julia. Anthony Twigo of County Administration. Mr. Cavalier, by the second part, are you referring to the hours worked requirement under the Auxiliary 2 classification?
yes.
That came out of the Public Safety Committee a couple months ago. I spoke with Sheriff Decatur subsequently. The Auxiliary 2 classification is the employee classification the Sheriff's Office is using to bring on the school resource officers. Under state law, or not state law, but Department of Justice policies, under that classification, deputies in that capacity, school resource officers, cannot serve more than 80 hours per calendar year. That, of course, leads to some consternation. So what this second part is doing is seeking to remove that 80 hours per calendar year requirement so that those resource officers could be available at those schools.
Okay.
What did the first part do then? I guess I'm getting confused as to what the differences are here.
The first part, so basically under state law, if a deputy retires and returns, they are only entitled to 80% of their retirement benefits.
Right.
So this gives them that full 100%.
And how would that then, so the extra 20% that they get is the difference here, right?
That's the difference.
And that would allow them to work full-time as a school protection officer?
That is correct.
So both of these approaches result in the same thing for a retired or a part-time deputy to be able to operate full-time in a school for the entire school year. Both of these things, are you saying, accomplish this task?
They would accomplish it.
And Julia, what do you think about
I
this?
think the first one incentivizes a retired police officer to come back and serve because they're not going to get a dip. So they will be making more to do a harder job. The second one is just changing it's allowing for more hours. You're getting rid of the 80 cap.
Right. Well, 80 for a year is crazy, anyhow.
Exactly. And it would then be, this is not limited to just Stafford County. So depending on the area, if you have more police, I mean, you can figure out how best to use it. It allows the flexibility of either a retired state police officer or a part-time, or a retired officer
Are
or
we
a
stating
part-time.
that for both these cases, this is only a waiver for school protection officers?
Correct, sir.
That's the key here.
That's
Okay.
the key.
That's really the part I want to drive home. And then, in your humble opinion, right now, what are our chances on this?
This is not I think.
I mean, it's new ground we're breaking here, right? I mean, this is
Absolutely. I
non-standard.
think to the extent that the state is funding the retirement, we're doing it in the second half of a budget year. So next year, Governor Northam will have his new budget, and that's when typically you would have larger things paid for. We will get a fiscal impact statement on it, which will also give us a better idea of really how painful this is going to be. We have a couple other budget items too in your package, so different amounts of money that we will be asking for totally. I say that this one has a greater chance because the House The House Select Committee on School Safety has focused on resource officers. The governor's School Safety Task Force has focused on resource officers and ways to protect students. While there's debate back and forth about who and how to arm, I don't think there's any debate that if you have prior law enforcement experience, that you are the best qualified person to be protecting schools. So I say that this has a better chance. I don't know if they'll go the full 20 to incentivize by that much, but maybe they make it enough so that it isn't going to be a financial detriment to the individual to come back.
Okay, well, I think our timing is good on this anyhow, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, did you have a question? No, okay. All right.
Good, all right. We're moving so quickly. Broadband telecommunication service districts. Number 5 is the final of the priority initiatives before we go through the generals. And I promise the next batch should move faster because you've talked about them many times before. This was requested by Supervisor Shelton. It would amend the code to allow for, to add broadband and telecommunication facilities to those types of facilities that may be constructed pursuant to the power granted to service districts. I know that there is some concern about the practical application should the code change happen, but that is the initiative, the 5th initiative for the new priorities for the board. Ma'am, do you want to?
Madam Chairman.
Yes, Mrs. Shelton.
One of the reasons I brought it up is at many of the VACO meetings, as well as other meetings where we come across other boards of supervisors, I've discovered that quite a few, 6 of them that I've listed so far, of the counties around us have engaged in public-private partnerships to provide broadband into their areas, and because they're underserved. And although it's not currently within 15.2-2403, then I think that it affords an opportunity for the future should someone wish to do that. That's why I've asked for that to be added.
It would be another tool in the toolbox.
Yes.
So those 5 items make up the priority initiatives for the board. We have more, but I don't know if you want to take them separately or I just go through them all. If you have any other questions on the, perfect. Moving on to the next items. That's perfect, Anthony, you can go to the next one. The first one on our list belongs to the Commissioner of the Revenue. To reimburse, for the state to reimburse localities for providing real estate tax relief to disabled veterans when 1% or more of the local tax base is lost due to the state mandated tax relief programs. I don't know if you want to expand on any of it. I can certainly say that at the General Assembly, this is a constant concern that legislators have to balance. You want to give tax relief, but when you add up all of the relief in the population of certain jurisdictions, you can actually do quite a bit of harm to other types of services that they would pay for. Good to see you.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Just so you all are aware, there's 900 people currently in the program in Stafford County, and we are relieving $3.2 million. And there's no end in sight. I have one person now dedicated to this program full-time. She was on vacation last week, so I signed 16 letters today letting new people into the program. So it is a growing problem. And one that I know it's a long shot to get anything through the General Assembly, but I feel like we've got to make a point to them that the impact that this is having on the locality, when almost 2 cents of our tax rate is going to this program that they mandated on us.
Thank you. And we're so close to, the Pentagon and Northern Virginia, so, and I would think that other localities, have we talked to Loudon and all of those north of us?
I've had some preliminary conversations with them. And one of the reasons why I wanted to put the trigger in place is because there's a lot of localities, most localities, this is not a huge burden on them.
Correct.
Botetourt County does not have the same
Right.
issues we do. So there are a handful of us that do, down in the Hampton Roads and up in the Northern Virginia region. And I am having discussions with them. I've had discussions with my association to try and get them on board to support legislation as well, and I'll be talking to VML in addition.
Okay. And we can help with conversations with VACO as well.
Great.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a comment. I mean, I've been there having this discussion. They just don't understand, when you say a veteran is 100% disabled, what exactly does that mean? And they all, in their mind, think that that guy is 100% disabled because he was in a combat zone, and that's what caused him to be 100% disabled. Not that he had a heart attack that he'd had whether he was in the military or not. And I always use myself as an example. I am 80% disabled, according to the Veterans Administration. All I'd have to do is go in the hospital once for a minor heart palpitation or whatever, and they would raise me to 100, and I'd save $3,000 to $4,000 in my taxes here, and I don't deserve it. So it's just, but it's a hard nut to crack because, as Julie will tell you, anything that deals with veterans flies right through the legislature. They don't even question it, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, and certainly not proposing any changes to the program, just who funds the program.
Oh, yeah, they're not.
Oh, I know.
According to my notes, it's 3.1 million real estate taxes for Stafford. I do not yet know what the total fiscal impact of this will be. So we'll report back on that. It'll be large. Next is economic development. So this was a bill that Stafford, VACO, and the Virginia Economic Developers Association opposed last year. It's likely to come back. There's been a lot of talk about it. And it was a very specific, it was because of a very specific mega site project in Chesterfield. And what the legislation sought to do is to have the expenditures of a local economic development authority to be authorized by the local governing body. And the reason for VACO, VML, and the other, the VEDA's opposition to the bill is technically you already do that when you do your budgeting process. The funds allocated for economic development go through the process with you all, so that there is already a level of oversight. But there was a lot of concern, and this very specific mega site project and the residents who are living around it, along with the Senator Chase, who represents them, were very upset about the process, and so they sought to use this legislation to alter it going forward. The legislation failed. It is possible that it'll come back next year, and so it was included as a point of discussion previously, or the possibility, do we want to change or do anything with the position. But as of last year, the position of Stafford was to support VACO's opposition. Number 3 is our COCA amendments. And I should take them, I'd like to take COCA and then skip one in the budget language about the national average. Governor Northam, I was actually at an event last night with Governor Northam, and he was talking about just this problem that when you have COCA and you have a line and what it does to the teachers in the school divisions on either side of it, and that it is a problem. And he tied that in with his discussion that we are on average $9,000 below the national average when it comes to teacher salaries, was the number he used last night. And so, again, this isn't the first year of a budget, so it won't be until next year that there really will be a larger effort to address teacher funding, that we'd have an opportunity to do anything about COCA. And just there isn't going to be any real major budgetary movements this year. But it is included because obviously the COCA is a huge problem for Stafford, but also being able to compete for national teachers and skilled individuals, especially in specific types of academic programs, we're below. So we've included, obviously, both of those items. And then the one I skipped over, the psychologists and social workers, the SOQ-funded program. We used to support it for nurses, and not that anyone would suggest that Stafford doesn't support it for that, but the position for psychologists and social workers comes out of all of the school safety task forces. The House one, the governor's one, many localities have talked about that funding this type of position and having as many of them as possible in schools may be able to help defend against unfortunate acts in any of our K through 12 schools.
As you noticed, as you remember, the nursing bill was my bill.
Yes, sir.
And I fought really hard for that. What is their association saying about this change in focus?
It is my understanding they have not taken, nobody's really taken a position on it yet because they don't know what the price tag is going to be. And until for many legislators, until we deal with tax reform, the change, and know how much money is available, many are kind of waiting to sign on to any of these initiatives. One, I will assume that many people will support this, one, because of the support that comes from the various task forces, but obviously next year, 2019, is a very big year for 140 members of the General Assembly. The environment, hydrilla, my favorite environmental issue. This number 6 was on here, budget language, to make sure it kept moving. This item is no longer necessary. VDAX approved, let's see if I have my letter here. At the board meeting on December 6th, it is, we assume that the board that deals with noxious weeds will vote to move these regulations forward, adding hydrilla to the list, so to be considered as part of for the state mitigation plan. So we do not need budget language, because what we passed last year is currently more than enough to keep moving on it. So we've made movement on it. Phase 2, wide water state park funding. Again, it's a budget year, so it's harder. We received last year the 6 FTEs and then approximately $1.5 million spread over 2 years. DCR is working on their budget now to figure out how much and when they want to make the request for stage 2, but we have the marker out there because we talked about you can't just stop after 1. We are going to need 2, and the park does have other capital type improvements that they're going to want to make. So until I know what DCR says they need and are asking for, we're keeping it as that stage 2 is important, but I don't have a number for you at this date. So the next initiative under environment is timbering regulations, which would be, we can do it legislatively, or we could attempt to just work through the delegation to petition the Department of Forestry to include in their regulations a permit requirement for timber harvest and more restrictive streamside management zone requirements for forestry beyond the forestry BMPs. To change the reg process, you can petition the board and you can work with your board member, or we can drop a bill to tell them to do it. There are 2 ways to move it. Yes, sir.
The one thing that I wanted included on this, and I'm not sure if it is or not yet, was the replanting requirement. Right now, there is no replanting requirement. They go in and clear cut 100% on certain areas. It's only the areas near the waterways that have the 50%. But in no way, shape, or form is there any replanting requirement anywhere that I'm aware of.
So you would like replanting for all of the areas?
Well,
Permits, more restrictive, and replanting for outside the 50-foot zone?
Correct.
It can be. We can certainly add that to it, and then the decision as to how to proceed.
Yeah, and I know that's going to be a tough one.
Yes. You always give me the good ones.
That's why we're paying you the big bucks.
Thank you. Stormwater management, it is expected that lower amounts, but money will be requested from many of the groups, as you can imagine, Ag, Chesapeake Bay, et cetera, to give more money to localities to be able to handle stormwater management. Again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but this
That's
not
not
being
going to
a
happen this year.
budget year,
No.
it's a lot harder.
And that one, it's funny, it's at the bottom of your list, but it's way up at the top of our list.
It's number 9 of
Oh, it's number 9.
16.
Oh, I'm just looking at your slide.
I'd like to comment.
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Bomke, to that point, we can reorder this list anyway.
Oh, no,
but
no, I
this
was just giving you a hard
I
time.
know. But this really is to take a general position to say that we as a county need help with this. We've had, I deal with it, as you all know, countless numbers of citizens, this summer especially. Last year, we finished with 635 constituent service cases. I'm already at 200 this year, and the bulk of those are stormwater management. So anything we can get as a locality to assist us, by all means, we just want to have it in our program.
And if I believe VACO is taking this on as well.
They are. And one bill that's already been drafted, Delegate Mark Cole, HB 1614, Delegate Thomas is co-signing on to it. That bill creates a fund for localities to establish, which essentially gives out grants for the purpose of stormwater management, infrastructure, construction, mitigation, et cetera. Now, the issue with that, two issues. One, it has a July 1 effective date, which of course is always later in the process after the bill gets passed. The second is there's specific language in here that says the state shall designate no state funding into it. It all has to be local. But regardless, it does provide localities a tool.
And what was that bill again? Bill?
HB 1614.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'll note there is some concern with the bill that the fact that there is no state funding in it, it's all local. And one would argue that or some localities argue that the reason that they're in the financial pickle they are is because of mandates from the Commonwealth. So that'll make for interesting debate on Delegate Cole's bill. The finance, the checkbook register bill, it comes back every year. Senator Sturtevant puts it in. We've always taken a position of against. Last year, actually, I'm kind of hoping that the rigorous debate and the locality-specific examples we were able to provide were able to show Senator Sturtevant that this really isn't going to be able to work. Just the way localities account for their dollars, and you couldn't be able to keep a register as accurate as he wants it because of the many steps that a locality has to go through when they expend funds. Maybe that'll be the last of it, but it's on here because it definitely is a huge issue for VACO and VML, and they always need not just our support, but our specific examples. The next two under legal, changes to the deponent procedure. This is a Senator Surville bill. VML has been working with Surville over the summer. We're going to see a new draft, so I would suggest we hold a position on this bill for now. As it is, it was poorly written in VML and VACO. Everybody had issues with it, but they actually think that they might be able to work out a way that it isn't a problem. But I would ask until I have a draft for you, maybe we can just hold back on a position. Next one.
Could you explain what the deponent procedure is?
No, I can't, actually. It was so poorly written that even VML had a hard time arguing against it, which is why he was more than willing to sit down and go over it with them. But apologize, I'm not real involved in local government depositions.
And Ms. Rashida, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but essentially, they could depose like a single member of the board, and that single member of the board would speak under deposition for the entire board. And yeah, it was a hard no for me. I mean, and we can't argue about what to order, or we can't agree on what to order for dinner. So let alone have somebody, one of us, represent the entire board in a deposition on an issue. It was problematic from the way I saw it.
And who was the genius that proposed that?
Surville, one of our own.
No surprise, thank you.
Ms. McClendon?
Supervisor Maurer, I'm not aware of this amendment. It hasn't been through our office, but we'll make sure that we track this legislative initiative and respond appropriately.
Thank you. Okay.
Senator Surville is also responsible for the next one, dealing with FOIA. The gist of the biggest problem with that whole bill was that we would hold elected officials personally liable for failing to properly certify closed sessions. This bill has been sent to the FOIA Commission for study, and the FOIA Commission has yet to meet or do anything about it, so it's entirely possible their report will not be ready for next session, so we might not have to deal with it at all. But the General Assembly likely will not take up the matter until the FOIA Commission has studied it and rendered an opinion.
Who's the chairman of the FOIA Commission now, do you know?
You always have these pop quizzes, not off the top of my head, but as soon as I get my phone, I can get you that.
Wasn't Stewart at one point on the FOIA Commission?
He was.
Is he still there?
They lost several members after the election.
It's not Jill Vogel on the Senate side? I don't know. Okay. Planning and zoning.
Planning and zoning, wireless communications infrastructure. Our planning commission would like to see changes, obviously, to last year's bill. It's possible individual localities will come up with ways to tweak, but as you recall, there was a lot of debate and discussion that went into it, and I fear, much like the Proffers bill, the old Proffer bill was, that nobody's going to want to touch this for a while. But if there are any bills that give localities back more of the authority that they had, we'll certainly send them to you, and obviously we support measures to give Stafford more control. Next, my personal favorite, amending the state code to deal with prostitution. a very, I don't know that it is a locality-specific issue. I'm assuming it's a problem elsewhere. But I will say the first time I heard of it was from Anthony, that the issue was here in Stafford. But obviously, we would seek to amend the code to change the definition of prostitution so as to cover certain acts and massage parlors to make it easier for the local law enforcement to handle. Poor word choice there. Sorry, I just thought about it. Oh, goodness. Transportation. Obviously, generally, we support any measures to bring more funding to Stafford County since we are the the traffic epicenter for the East Coast. So that will stay the same. The next one on smart scale, I talked to Delegate Thomas after he had or others had a very successful meeting with Secretary Valentine. And we are hopeful that we'll see legislation this year changing smart scale to look at 7 days a week, recognizing how awful weekends can be here too. And also the accessibility factor, the 45-minute radius, that might not be the best way to handle things anywhere, but specifically in our area. Other points, they were not as willing to take up this year, obviously because they also impact the budget and funding. And again, this isn't a budget year. But he is hopeful that those two matters, with 7 days a week being kind of the biggest, would be addressed and can be addressed in this coming session. Other than that, unless there are any other issues anyone wants to bring up to add to the agenda, we'll refine based upon the comments. And I think Anthony's plan is to get the final language to you on Thursday.
Does anyone have anything else from Ms. Hammond on our legislative initiatives? Okay, with that, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now at this point, so we'll be voting on that at our next meeting. And now Mr. Snellings is going to read us into closed session.
Whereas the board desires to hold a closed meeting for one, consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to Allen versus Stafford County, where such consultation or briefing and open meeting would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the board. 2, consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members regarding the 2015 Memorandum of Understanding with Mosaic Acquire Capital LLC, which is a specific legal matter requiring the provision of legal advice by counsel. 3, discussion and consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the board. Whereas pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3, A7, and A8, such discussions may occur in closed meeting. So
Second.
moved.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please cast your vote. Tally.
Sorry, Gary, I jumped
Tally the vote. Motion passes. We are now in closed session. Please cast your vote. Tally the vote. Motion passes unanimously. We are now adjourned till the 7 o'clock meeting. Thank you. Tonight, Mrs. Maurer will be leading us in the invocation, and Mr. Dudenheffer will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
Okay, please join me. Dear Lord, thank you for this beautiful rain-free day and the opportunity to gather together to discuss the important business before our county. Please guide our hearts and minds as we thoughtfully contemplate all information before us in setting policy for the future of Stafford and our constituents. Lord, please be with Supervisor Snelling's mother and his family as she recuperates from a fall, and also be with Mrs. Cohen and her family as she also recuperates from a fall. Lord, please watch over our public safety personnel and our military personnel, both here and abroad, as they protect and defend our right to assemble here tonight. Keep them safe and able to come home to their loved ones. In all these things we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
So with us today are the drum majors from the county's 5 high schools. And I'm going to ask them if they will come forward. From Brook Point, we have Major Lauren Black. Colonial Forge High School drum majors Caroline Pearson and Cole Ramos. Mountain View High School drum major Lisa Herningen. North Stafford High School Major Erica Johnson. And Stafford High drum majors Michelle Sully and Lauren Surrett. So welcome, and you are here to tell us about Band Together to Fight Hunger that we all love to participate in every year. So I'll leave it with you now.
Good evening, everyone. So we are here tonight to cordially invite each of you to join us on Monday evening, November 5th at 7 p.m. at Mountain View High School for our 8th annual Band Together to Fight Hunger. If it should rain, this event will be held on Monday, November 12th. Gates open at 5:30 p.m., so you have plenty of time to drop off your donations and enjoy dinner while you wait for the performances to begin at 7 p.m. We hope you are all planning to come and join us too.
Band Together to Fight Hunger is an exciting showcase of our own talented musicians from all of our high schools. This is the only time during the year where in the course of less than 2 hours, you can have the opportunity to hear and see all 5 of our high school marching bands in concert. It is also a night when we have a chance to give back to our own community.
Non-perishable canned food donations and monetary donations are gladly accepted. Last year, with the support of our business partners and attendees, we were able to provide over 30,000 meals back to our surrounding communities. This year, our goal is to provide 35,000 meals for the hungry citizens in our area.
Did you know that Virginia only has 7 food banks in the entire state? Our Fredericksburg Regional Food Bank serves Caroline, Fredericksburg, King George, Spotsylvania, Stafford, and Locust Grove. They are able to reach and support 57 school-age program partners. It's incredible that we are able to touch the lives of so many adults and children in all of these surrounding counties by giving back for just one night.
Additionally, by partnering with the Fredericksburg Regional Food Bank, we're able to reach 66 different food pantries, 23 fresh connection agencies, 16 USDA pantries, 13 mobile pantries, and 47 Food for Life Commodities Supplemental Food Program sites, and 27 volunteers. Our food bank is the storehouse for food and other products collected. From there, donations are distributed to our local food pantries and are given directly to the people in our surrounding communities. We are counting on you to join us on November 5th with your non-perishable food donation. Your donation goes to the Fredericksburg Regional Food Bank, who in turn supports our 13 Stafford food pantries, 3 mobile food pantries, and 12 school-age program partners.
After our on-field presentation to the Fredericksburg Regional Food Bank, attendees will be treated to the grand finale when all our bands will band together to fight hunger. 400-plus high school band students on a field playing together is pretty amazing. It's also one of the highlights of our year.
Please don't forget to bring your non-perishable food donation for the Fredericksburg Regional Food Bank too. Thank you for your time this evening and your continued commitment to our band programs. We look forward to seeing you on Monday, November 5th at 7 p.m. at Mountain View High School.
Present. Arms. Order. Arms. At ease.
So thank you very much, and I want to thank Miss Karen Bingham, who has been their sponsor, and she's now the assistant principal at Conway Elementary. So anyway, Karen, thank you for everything that you do, and thank you, drum majors, and we'll see you on Monday, November 5th. Thank you. Now we have presentations by the public. If you would like to comment, please remain courteous and respectful to members of the audience and to the board. If you are here to speak about one of this evening's public hearings, please hold your comments until the public hearing is open. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes. Speak slowly and clearly into the microphone and begin by stating your name and address. Please refer to the light on the podium to monitor your time. Green indicates the start of your remarks, yellow indicates you have 1 minute to summarize, and red obviously means that your time is up. So this evening I do have a few speaker cards, so we will start with those, and then we'll come to other members in the chamber. The first one I have is Verna Lang. Long. Oh, Long.
Verna Long, 2451 Harpoon Drive, Whitewater District. The reason I'm speaking today is you will be debating a waiver of Aquia Harbor to install a second lane 4 feet short of the state standard. This sounds like an easy fix for a legal organization. By applying this waiver, you are endangering families, walkers, and military personnel who use the walking path to access the town center, the restaurants, the shops, or their work. If Aquia Harbor lies about being a property owners association, then the rest of the story is a lie. Overlooking the criminal activity of Aquia Harbor in the early years has placed a burden on real property owners. Every year, over 266 families move into the harbor, generating revenue for title lawyers, real estate agents, and independent contracts. That is the bait. When you get hooked, the only thing that matters is the money, not honesty. Stop allowing the tax evasion. Stop doing business with a fraudulent organization. Number 1, ask for an investigation. If Alexis Harvey, a.k.a. Aquia Harbor Property Owners Association, has the right to collect debt. 2, command the association submit a declaration of allocations with maintenance cost. 3, command revenue-generating facilities to be reported to the Commissioner of Revenue, Code of Virginia, Chapter 36, 58-1, 3603. 4, command the fraudulent name containing Property Owners Association be removed. 5, command a business trust be created to ensure all Stafford residents can benefit. 7, command the parks be turned over to the county. They have been open to the public as a common area for tax evasions procedures. The golf course, the marina, stables, baseball fields, soccer fields, Lions Park, the road in front of the county fire department, Washington Drive. 7, command the money in the reserved account be used to comply with the bankruptcy, pay taxes, and build roads to state standard. No roads within Aquia Harbor meet state standards. This would be our first state standard lane in the harbor. You are going to give it a waiver, endangering fire trucks, ambulances, and residents and visitors. Allowing a sole proprietorship owned by the president of the board, Ms. Alexis R. Harvey, to control, collect fraudulent debt, to access an easement to our home, then claiming to be open to the general public. This is oppressive behavior will only continue to endanger residents living in Stafford County. Complete information has been sent to a Stafford attorney and 2 board members. Supporting information is found in the Stafford Court land records and State Corporate Commission and Common Interest Community files. Please write this wrong, and I'm sorry I went over.
Thank you. The next speaker is Michelle McQuiston.
Good evening. My name is Michelle McQuiston. I live at 29 Breezy Hill Drive in Stafford, Virginia. I'm here to talk to you about well contamination. About a week and a half ago, I was informed that my well had been contaminated because of my neighbor's septic system. It's been a week and a half. I still have no idea what to do. I can't drink my water. I can't brush my teeth. Taking a shower, I still feel dirty. Short of calling the USGS, I really have no way to find out why or how to fix the problem. I only tested it because I got sick. I was sick constantly, so I tested my water, and it's contaminated. So I need to find the source. Everyone says shock your well. Well, that doesn't work. It doesn't work with an alternative septic system because you kill your peat moss, you ruin your water filter systems, you ruin the plumbing in your house, so that doesn't work. On Friday, I'm having a UV light installed, $1,300. Still doesn't fix the problem. Not to mention, I just want to move now. I don't want to live there. I don't want to drink the water. I will always wonder, am I drinking someone else's poo? So, thank you for hearing me. Have a great day.
Mr. Foley, could we make sure that we have staff reach out with her? Okay. The next speaker card I have is Tom Carlson.
My name is Tom Carlson. I live at 10 Secretariat Drive. It's good to see all of you again. It's been a while. I really, if you hadn't heard, I really have retired from Habitat for Humanity. It's been over a year now. But I'm here tonight to speak to you about a conclave that we had about 2 weeks ago. Meg was there. It was in celebration of the International Day of Peace. Now, when I first heard about that, I thought, oh my God, it's another tree hugger thing. We're all going to sit around singing Kumbaya. That's not what it was about at all. My Rotary in Fredericksburg, which is the Rappahannock Rotary, not to be confused with the Fredericksburg Rotary, we planned this out, and we had numerous city and county officials there. Gary Skinner was there from Spotsylvania County, former Mayor Davies from Fredericksburg, Dr. Tim Duffy from the city of Fredericksburg, and of course Meg was there as well. Tim Baruti. We had representatives from the Sheriff's Department here, the Sheriff's Department in Spotsylvania County, numerous folks that are considered activists in the community. The whole idea was to present some thoughts on how to avoid crisis before it begins. Get some discussions going so people know who to talk to if there is some type of a crisis. A classic example was presented, and that was in the city of Charlottesville. If you remember a couple of years ago, there was a tragic incident where a young man walked into a church Bible study and murdered 9 people. Well, right away, you had people like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. They wanted to descend on Charlottesville. Charlottesville said, we don't need you folks coming down here. We don't need you at all. We have the means to be able to discuss this ourselves within the community and resolve this in a peaceful manner. We don't need outsiders coming in. So that was the whole idea of this program, was to have these type of discussions. One of the things that I committed to as a resident of Stafford County was I'm going to get some small groups together around the county and have these same types of discussions so people know who to turn to when there is a pending crisis, essentially. So it can be solved internally within the community by people of the community. And I'm here tonight just to tell you a little bit about that and ask for your support in that. I would really like to, when I go to a particular district, if we have it at a church or we have it at a school, whatever, I would really like to see the supervisor for that district come and join us and be a part of those discussions. So that's my purpose in being here. I know that Meg had talked to you a little bit about it this afternoon, but I hope I can garner some support. All of this the whole conclave was based on the Rotary 4-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And I forgot the fourth one, I'm sorry, nervousness, I guess. But at any rate, the point is that there are principles, guiding principles there, and it really does act. So really would enjoy hearing from you. So thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, the next speaker card is Ann Hubka.
Good evening. We are from the Aquia District. My husband and I have just moved to Marble Point, and we're building a home there. And we were shocked to learn not only do we have really bad roads that are quite dangerous and crumbling and falling apart, we also aren't going to have high-speed internet. And there's hundreds of homes out there paying lots of taxes and do not have access to what we now consider pretty much a basic utility. Cindy has done a great job. She meets with us once a month and has been going through everything she can. And Bob Thomas has introduced to her that there's state funding that will pay a grant, about $100,000, that can be paid to us to help us and actually pay for the towers that need to come here or whatever other company resources that we might have to pay for, whether it's studies or equipment. But also we're going to need a portion of that to be paid by the county. So we're just asking for your support when that comes up. Hundreds and hundreds of homes, and trust me, it's a hot issue. We talk about it every single day on our Facebook page, and I know a lot of people are going to be upset if you guys aren't willing to help. So we hope that you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the board chambers that would like to address the board? If so, please come forward. Mr. Wadowski, I wanted to let you know our yellow light is not working tonight. It goes from green to red. So when you have 1 minute, I'll just go like that, okay?
No, you don't have to. I have this down pat. I never go
Oh.
over.
Okay.
You always give other people more time than me. Paul Waldowski, 8 Pickett Lane. Yes, water stinks in this county. It was in my bathtub. You still owe me for 2 bags of Epsom salts that got wasted, and I don't trust any water, especially from my Shih Tzus. Now, another hot button of mine is move that church into my public schools. There's a Freedom from Religion Foundation who often receives queries from shocked members of the public who receive flyers at their home inviting them to attend church at their local public school. Well, I'm tired of receiving those flyers from Woodbridge coming to our public schools. It's just a matter of time. There's already litigation, 2011. The school board in New York City won a very important case, so it'll get solved. Now, another attributing factor of your water in this county is the Rocky Fork Reservoir. Remember that project, how good man could do? I hope you saw all my nice pictures of the development. See Hurricane Florence, remember that's my mom's first name? Man, God love her. It was 10 years ago this past week that she passed. And this week I looked in my yearbook, and in 1982, the summer of 82, that's 35 years ago, I'm going to make an allegation to this board. That's when Stafford Meadows was incorporated in the Griffiths-Whitewater District with public water and sewer, and I've got all the records to prove it. We still don't get public water and sewer. And it's about time that maybe I'll get an FBI investigation. I think I'll call President Trump. You know, he's my buddy. He's on Twitter, so I have no problems communicating with him. Now, I heard in the, I saw 42 seconds. Thank you. In the invocation, remember the invocation begins with the word in, like the word brain ends with in. And rain's got in it, so rain is good. Really good. It's one of those good things to have. If you have too much rain, it's too bad. And information's another good in word. Remember, that was in the invocation. But you just heard one of our speakers, internet is the most important one. So I advise you to get on your bicycles, get out there in Vista Woods and all the other gerrymandered districts, and get the voters to come out and vote. Vote once, vote often.
Okay. I don't see anyone else in the board chambers that that would like to speak. So with that, I'm going to move on to our public hearings. Tonight, we have 4 public hearings. The first is consideration of an amendment to the county's index of official road names. Mr. Harvey, this is item number 10.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is an amendment to the zoning ordinance, which the index of official road names resides in. If I can have the computer, thank you. The board is here to consider naming 2 existing private streets that currently don't have a name. The county code section requires that streets and access ways serving more than 2 structures that are not readily identifiable from the main public road should be named. Staff's requesting street names, has requested information for potential street names from all the owners and received petitions for that. This issue has previously been discussed at the Community and Economic Development Committee and the Planning Commission. There are 2 recommended street names, one for each one of the roads. One is Pierce Bailey Place, the other one is Tank Creek Way. Pierce Bailey Place is located off Courthouse Road within the Hartwood election district. It's near the Colonial Forge neighborhood and Colonial Forge High School. And then Tank Creek Way is located off of Widewater Road. It's termed because of its proximity to Tank Creek, which is the border between the county and Quantico. The Community and Economic Development Committee referred this to the Planning Commission for public hearing. The commission at September 12th recommended adoption of the 2 street names, and staff does as well. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Mr. Harvey, is this in the Hartwood or the Aquia Griffiths Widewater?
It's in both districts, ma'am, with
Okay.
2 different roads. The first road, Pierce Bailey Place, is in Hartwood, and then Tank Creek Way is in Griffiths Widewater.
Okay.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
let me ask the county attorney, this was not advertised as Hartwood. This is advertised as Aquia/Griffiths Widewater. At least it is on my agenda. I don't know what the advertisement in the Freeland Star stated, but can we hold a public hearing with that error? Or if it is an error?
Madam Chairman, Supervisor Snellings, I would recommend opening the public hearing. I can look into the advertisement while the public hearing is going on, and I can get that information back to you.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that the folks on that street, if they look at it and it says Aquia, I said, well, that's not me, it's somebody else.
Right.
And they obviously wouldn't show up.
And Madam Chairman, Supervisor Snellings, staff provide notice to all the affected owners along both street segments, so they've received individual notice.
Okay. All right, any questions for Mr. Harvey? Okay, thank you. All right, with that, I'm going to open the public hearing. And if you would like to speak, looks like we have 2 people in the audience. Please come forward.
Paul Waldowski, 8 Picket Lane. I attended the Planning Commission meeting on this public hearing, and I totally agree with the Tank Creek naming convention because we know the Marines, they have tanks, and that's pretty good symbolism. We just put tanks in C5s, that's what the Air Force does, and then we drop them wherever you want. But I have a lot of heartburn with the Pierce Bailey Place. Now, Franklin Pierce, he was one of our presidents, 1853 to 1857. You could Google that, look that up. And obviously, we're in the wrong district. So why would you let affected owners, selected planning commissioners, selected economic aspects, when street names affect all Stafford residents? Not just those people. There's 128,961 of us, according to the 2010 census. I just don't understand how you can do favoritism. Amazing. You should pass a CUP.
Thank you. Would anyone else in the board chambers like to address us on this public hearing? Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Mrs. McClendon?
Madam Chairman and Supervisor Snellings, the advertisement in the Freelance Star was correct. It was not specific as to election district. There is an error in the staff report. I don't believe it's material. However, if the board feels it was material, this item could be deferred and brought back at the next meeting to allow those property owners a chance to come out if the board so chooses.
As long as the property owners were notified, which they were, I don't have a problem with moving forward.
All right, with that, bring it back to Mr. Snelling, since this is in his district, proposed ordinance 018-30.
Motion to approve, Madam Chairman.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Just to note that this does include the Widewater District naming too, correct? We're not doing two separate ones.
That's correct. There's one ordinance for both names.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, with that, please cast your vote. Tally the vote. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to item number 11. Golly, my papers are sticking together. I'm sorry here.
Madam Chairman, item number 11 is consideration of amending our comprehensive plan to adopt a groundwater resources evaluation for the Piedmont area of the county. And if I can have the computer, thank you. The county is broken up into two physiogeographic regions. One is the coastal plain, which is generally the area east of Interstate 95, and the other is the Piedmont province, which is generally located on west of Interstate 95. There is a significant difference between both provinces from a groundwater standpoint. Generally, the geology within the coastal plain is derived of mainly clay and sandy soils, which tend to allow for rapid or reasonable movement of groundwater within that province. So in general terms, well yields are not really much of a problem in the coastal plain. However, in the Piedmont, the underlying geology is typically granite structure, whereas wells in the Piedmont province typically rely on fractures in the rock as storage for water. Water moves very slowly within the substrate of the Piedmont province geology, and has some additional issues and concerns for wells being drilled in that area. The next map shows our urban services area overlaid upon the Piedmont physiological region. As you can see by the purple hatching, that's the urban services area today. Most of the area outside the urban services area in the Piedmont aquifer are located in the Hartwood and Rock Hill election districts. Some background, in 2001 and 2002, the county experienced a long-standing drought. That caused a lot of concern with the Board of Supervisors, so the board worked with staff and we hired a consultant to help us develop our first groundwater management plan. And that was adopted in 2005, and it looked at the county as a whole and looked at some individual well records and dealt with well yields and looked at the overall water budget for both the Piedmont and the coastal plain aquifers. That plan determined that there was adequate well supply for the county going forward in the future. However, there was some noted concerns about well yields and other long-term issues for ensuring that we have adequate groundwater supply for the coastal plain and areas beyond our region that our area tends to provide groundwater resources for. In 2017, Supervisors Maurer and Snellings had a town hall meeting because of the concerns that the board was receiving regarding low yielding wells in the area, and some wells that were drilled that did not have adequate water supplies. The findings of this new study were that there's an estimated water budget for 6,500 new household wells across the whole Piedmont province. The comprehensive plan currently projects 200 new homes being built per year outside the urban services area. Assuming that we have about half of those units being built in the Piedmont province, that would give us way more capacity than the current 20-year projection for groundwater as an overall water supply for safe yield. And when you look at that 200-unit projection across the entire comp plan timeframe, that's 3,600 dwelling units. However, we still have problems with low yielding wells, and that's still an area of concern. We do note that in general from the study of the 1,800 wells that they surveyed, they found that newer wells built after the year 2000 have higher yields than the older wells did. Also, the report includes a map that classifies well yield potential for various geological units as low, moderate, or high yielding wells. And this is a map that shows the well yields. And generally speaking, the red area is the low yielding wells, and that's wells that yield between 6 and 10 gallons per minute. The minimum standard for the health department is 3 gallons per minute, and that can be sometimes handled by either drilling a deeper well for water storage or providing a water storage tank in the home. The yellow is moderate well yields, and then also the high well yield area is shown in green. Now, you'll see some gray on the map. That's an area where there was not enough well data that was found to substantiate what the well yield types would be. I'll note that some of this area that's identified on the map, for instance, this area is located where we have a project called Westlake, and we also have a proposed quarry there. Those are very large land masses and have very few houses in that vicinity. Also, this area here is generally located within our urban services area, so we may have limited number of wells that were identified, and that may help explain some of that. We also have some very rural areas out in the far western part of the county where, it's again, low-density development. There may not be enough wells to substantiate what type of yield we would see in those areas. The plan recommendations has some suggestions for best management practices. One of those recommendations is to consider establishing groundwater monitoring wells. If we were to do so, the approximate cost for each well is around $12,000 to install and maintain. That would be something the board would have to consider as a part of a future recommendation. These wells would not be in active use, so they would be there to monitor the overall rise and drop of the groundwater in the nearby area. Also, there was information provided from surrounding jurisdictions that have hydrogeologic testing standards. We'll note there was a lot of discussion with the board earlier this year and last year that Stafford County does not have the authority to require hydrogeologic testing for building permits. However, some jurisdictions have dealt with that standard through their subdivision ordinance, and they may require that a certain number of future lots before they're created has a well drilled to ensure that there's adequate water supply. So that may be something the board may want to consider in the future as well. With regard to the overall amendment to the Plan Commission held its public hearing on August 29th and is recommending approval, and I'll be happy to answer any detailed questions you might have.
Questions for Mr. Harvey?
Mr. Harvey, I don't know where I'm going to go with this, but I was confused, and maybe you can help me. When I looked at the RFP that we sent out in March of last year, then one of the vendors that was responding to the RFP asked where our original study was from 2004. In your slides, you talk about a groundwater management, groundwater management plan from 2005, but yet in this report and in the questions and answers, we said 2004. not that it matters, I guess, but which one is it?
Well, Ms. Sheldon, the study was done in 2004, but officially adopted in 2005 as it went through the public hearing process. So that may be where some of the difference in dates
Okay.
lies.
Okay, and so, all right, that works for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Mauer? You don't have
Okay.
anything?
Just a couple of questions as we've kind of been marching down this road, and I don't know the answer to this, but these wells, these monitoring wells, can they, and I'm mostly concerned in that red area in the Rock Hill District, do we have the slide where we overlay the number of wells, and do we have that slide? The picture? Okay.
No, ma'am, I don't have it in my presentation.
Okay,
But
so
it is in
there's-
the document.
There's a picture within the document that shows all of the wells, especially in that upper portion of the Rock Hill District that overlays that red area. If we put in a well monitoring device to look at capacity, is there any way we could use that same thing to start looking at quality? And the reason I ask this is we've had like the Friends of the Rappahannock come in and talk about, you know, the status of our rivers and how our rivers are being polluted because of overdevelopment. And now I'm kind of looking at Lake Arrowhead where septic systems are failing and I've got some issues of well contamination there. Is there a way that we could use those same monitoring wells to kind of look at the slow-moving water, as you had mentioned, and the quality of that water, that groundwater? Do you know?
Madam Chairman, Ms. Mauer, I suspect that's a possibility. Maybe I could defer to Mr. Towery, who may have more expertise in that area since he's a civil engineer.
Or Mr. Smith?
Or Mr. Smith, yes.
Where's Keith?
Jason Tower, Director of Public Works. Certainly, water quality testing could be done on those wells. In terms of how, I guess some of it would be a question of what kind of information you'd be looking for. The wells themselves can be very much affected by the local area immediately around
Right.
it. So you could have one well that may show certain signs and another well shortly thereafter that may not. And also because of the nature of the Piedmont, geology there, it would be hard, I think, just from my vantage point to get an overall reading, but certainly you could get some isolated indications of what might be going on in a certain area.
And if we had 4 or 5, let's say, in the Piedmont region, potentially, and the areas that I'm mostly concerned about are the big red areas where we have half-acre lots. And you know, Lake Arrowhead, Hidden Lake, they make me nervous. And so anyway, it was just a thought, wondering if we could get kind of a 2-for-1 out of that. And we might need to peel back the onion on that a little bit more.
And there may be, and I'll just throw this out there may be some kind of collaboration that could be done with the health department, perhaps on, now they don't require regular testing, but perhaps if there is testing results available in the area from that we could pull that data and have that information on hand too.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from Mr. Harvey? All right. Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Okay, with that, I'm going to open the public hearing on item number 11. Planning and zoning, consider amending the comprehensive plan to include the Piedmont Area Groundwater Study, proposed resolution R18-221. With that, I'm opening the public hearing. If you would like to speak to the board, you have 3 minutes to do so. Would anyone like to come forward?
Paul Waldowski, 8 Pickett Lane. Gerrymandered Rock Hill Red District, Chesapeake Bay watershed, long-standing drought, no rain in 2001 and 2002, and you're complaining about rain. Also remember there are no issues and concerns for drilling wells. There are opportunities. So maybe you need to take care of the gray areas in this county. I love when you use the color gray. Just gives me more fuel for my speeches. $12,000. Yep, I want one of them groundwater monitoring capacity quality entities right in Stafford Meadows, right underneath. Hey, we even have an open area there so we can see what the quality is and what's going on, because that's a red area for 35 years. I told you, I'm going to call the FBI. We'll get them to do it by the end of the week for you, so don't worry about it. Now, the big problem in this county is the health department. Anytime I bring up mold or people moving, waterways and water drainage, especially onto my property, it's just amazing. And if you look, you already have a resolution. You're going to amend it and just do it. And like I said in the first place about the comprehensive plan, it's inaccurate. It's got many issues. So now you have opportunities to take care of it. And this is just one of the issues that needs to be addressed. And it's not just the Piedmont area that you need to deal with groundwater. Like I said, come to 8 Picket Lane. We got groundwater, and I will not use it at all. No, it's 51 seconds, 51, not 61. But thank you, that's good. I don't look at you that often because I wear a hat on purpose, because then I peek through to see which one of you is talking to one another about my speeches, because I'm sure I have your full attention about this. 29 seconds. I am the public. Wow. So Lake Arrowhead's got a problem. Isn't that funny? And Hidden Lake's got a problem. Well, the problems are they were built at the same time as Stafford Meadows. So anything that's got a water problem, just go to Public Works. They won't do nothing about it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board? Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the board.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Moses, the Hartwood District, I'll motion for approval.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, with that, please cast your vote. Tally the vote. Motion carries unanimously. We move on to item number 12. This is an ordinance to provide for a separate classification of the merchant's capital tax for wholesalers for businesses in excess of 10,000 square feet. I think that's actually 100,000. Isn't it 100? Yeah, it's 100,000. And with that, Mr. Holden.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm here to tell you a little bit about this proposed change. We've discussed it at the Community Economic Development Committee back in June. I just have a few slides to explain it to you and primarily for the public. I'm going to talk a little bit about the background, a little about the importance to economic development of this proposed change, the potential value to the county, and quite frankly, our message about economic development just briefly. First of all, as background, merchant capital tax is a tax on stored goods, items in a warehouse. In 2017, the Board of Supervisors passed a resolution as part of the board's then legislative initiative to request this change from the General Assembly. The General Assembly then enacted Statute 58.1 mentioned there. And that statute allows the separation from the merchant capital tax of a wholesaler whose inventory is located in a structure of 100,000 square feet or more. So in English, that means a large warehouse facility. The board may tax those facilities at a different rate than other warehouse facilities of smaller size. So the importance to economic development for this, first of all, warehouse and distribution is one of Stafford County's targeted sectors. It's a targeted sector for the entire region, frankly. We're in an area that the market is asking for these types of facilities. In particular, in more recently, these types of facilities are large, what are called e-commerce facilities. These are large warehouses. These aren't just racks and racks of mattresses. These are highly automated, tooled facilities of which quite often many online companies store products and then distribute it around a region. It's important as well that we, as I've gotten here, again, I've been here 4 months, I think it's important, you're going to hear me talk about this more often, that we diversify a tax base here. This is a targeted sector and will allow us to do that. The center part area is primarily an area that is ripe for this kind of facility. We've had developers approach us about doing these kinds of facilities in that area. But let me point out, the separation of this tax for these larger facilities would be county-wide. Secondly, and the value to the county is additional quality jobs. These are jobs that I would classify as good jobs, perhaps slightly above good. They are technical in nature. I've been in such facilities. These are jobs where people are running automated machines and that kind of information. This also would potentially have a net revenue positive impact on the finances in Stafford County. We did an analysis with the Commissioner of Revenue based on one particular potential interest. We looked at the development of a $38 million, approximately $40 million warehouse distribution, primarily an e-commerce type facility in the county. First of all, and I'll say in a minute, that will not happen if the merchant capital tax is in place for these facilities. It just doesn't, the economics don't work. However, if one such facility were to be located of that size, of that value, it would net positive in terms of tax revenue to the county. Finally, on our message, I think it's important we start delivering an important message to the markets we're after in terms of economic development. This message will provide a very clear message to distribution centers, particularly in the e-commerce arena, that we're serious about economic development, diversifying our tax base, and bringing more jobs to Stafford County. I have been told by people that Stafford County has been looked over for large warehouse facilities because of the merchant capital tax. So this sends a message to our target industries that we are for business development. We're here to help expand and create jobs and have investment. And with this, a facility this size further makes Stafford County a high-value, low-cost place for business. That's my presentation to you. I'll be glad to take any questions, of course.
Any questions for Mr. Holden? Okay, you covered it well. Thank you. With that, I'm going to open the public hearing on this item. And with that, anyone in the board chambers that would like to address the board, please come forward and speak. You have 3 minutes.
Paul Wadowski, 8 Pickett Lane, the gerrymandered Rock Hill District, and I also own property in the gerrymandered Griffiths Whitewater District. Wow, favoritism at its favorite hour. I mean, let's favor this guy. Come on. Let's pass this. Oh, it says economic development, consider it. Let's see, if we build, they will come. I think they made a movie about that, but this ain't baseball here. And you put any more warehouses out there, you're going to tear up the land. I think I sent you enough pictures to show you this week on Shelton Woods, how you tear up land, but you haven't seen the latest ones, how they have to fill in the land. Just amazing how we're going to do things. And we're going to bring in quality jobs. Man, good technical running automated machines. Well, good ain't good enough. You're going to bring in quality jobs, they should be the best jobs, and this warehouse and distribution doesn't do it. Walmart and all the big box stores already do warehousing and distribution just fine. And Amazon's going to crush everyone anyway in the 21st century. Remember, we're just teenagers in this century. We're 18 years old. That's when some people get a PhD, you know, a public high school diploma. You also killed my cicadas, 2030. And that's my biggest concern. Whenever you try to build anything and you give anyone favoritism in this county, you're going against Lady Justice, and you're all Republicans, so just put your Pirates patch on. We favor the right. I'm going to bring you my Pirates patch. I just got one. For Halloween, I'm going to dress up as Where's Waldo. So you'll get to see
1 minute.
all the good stuff. No, 56 seconds. 53 seconds. I didn't have time to read all this. I was playing poker today. You know, I didn't know, let's see, where's the other one that I found? Oh, Stafford County is within a day's drive of more than 60% of the U.S. population in most major domestic markets. That sounds like a subjective statement to me. More than 60%. Is that 60.001, 61%, 69%? The county lies at the intersection in a number of major federal highways. Wow. What about 627 Mountain View Raceway?
Okay, is there anybody else who would like to address the board? Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing, bring this back, proposed ordinance 018-38.
I make a motion for approval.
Okay, have a motion and an approval. Any discussion?
Yep.
Ms. Shelton?
I have a question for you, Mr. Foley. On the package that we received, the summary conclusion, the last statement says staff also recommends the board consider reducing the tax rate in calendar year 2019. Are you talking about the merchant capital tax rate?
Yes, since we've created a separate classification within merchant's cap, you'll still have to set a rate for that new classification, but you won't be have that in front of you until this coming spring when the budget process goes forward. So we're just suggesting that you consider dropping that, we believe, to zero so that it will be as competitive as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Cohen?
Not so much a question. Just in my various trips around the county, and particularly my area this summer, I met with many businessmen and women who have brought this issue up and said that this would help with expansion of their industries and their businesses, that this was a first step. Also, we talk about the 21st century, e-commerce is a trend in this country. It's a different type of warehouse than what people may well think of. An e-commerce warehouse is not so much giving out things for Walmart or such. It's data. And these data centers would be very important, and the pay of those people is actually very good, and it is not a great amount of traffic, so that we have an opportunity to do something here that is in touch with the modern economy and the way this country is moving. And so because this is what people who are in various industries are saying we need to do to help expand our tax base in this county. That's why I made the motion. Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, with that, please cast your vote. Tally the vote. Motion passes unanimously. The last item, our last public hearing of the evening, grants a permanent utility easement on county-owned property to Dominion Energy. I would like to note that this easement is actually in the George Washington District, not the Falmouth District, as was shown on the agenda and agenda materials. Mr. Towery, item number 13.
Good evening. Jason Towery, Public Works, here to present on R-18-205, a resolution authorizing the county administrator to grant a permanent utility easement on county-owned land to Dominion Energy. I think this is fairly straightforward. In 2012, the county and VDOT entered into a programmatic agreement for the Falmouth intersection improvements. And as part of that, the county received a parcel of land on the southeast intersection of Cambridge Street and Butler Road. This was actually formerly 4 parcels. It was condensed into 1 parcel before it was transferred to the county. During the course of the project, Dominion Power was required to relocate a portion of its utilities on that property, and so did so, but through the course of the construction, VDOT and Dominion were unable to come to an agreement on the easement in time before the county, before the parcel was conveyed to the county. And so VDOT and Dominion have requested that the county consider granting this 30-foot easement to Dominion Power. Just to clarify again, the electric line is already in place. It has already been built and constructed. But again, this is just to convey the easement that was originally intended to be conveyed by VDOT. Of course, the board is required to hold a public hearing to grant these easements to Dominion. Here's the, and I'm going to try this marker. I haven't done this before. I'm going to try it. Here's the site here, of course, Cambridge Street. This is Route 1, Butler Road, and Route 17 here. And this piece right here is, of course, the parcel that we're discussing. Next slide here shows a little bit of a close-up. This was from the original plat showing the 4 separate parcels, 2, 3, 4, there. And then, let's see, different color. This line right through here is where the electric line lies and resides. And the easement. And here's a picture showing the property. Of course, there's the wayfinding sign. Everyone's probably very familiar with this piece. And that's my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Towery? Mr. Cohen?
Yes, and I'm very familiar with this. One question I asked Mr. Dayton today, but I just want to get clarification. We've had discussions in the past about the fact that this, now that we own this, this could be some type of parking or something for events down in beautiful downtown Falmouth. And so, because of my friend Irma. So I'm just wondering, since the things are already there, so it's not going to thwart any efforts that we have to try to help that area. I mean, this isn't new poles, new things, new things that are going to impact those neighbors. It's already there.
That's correct.
Okay. And so all that has been taken into consideration. He says with a very leading question.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tower.
Sure thing.
Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Towery? Okay, I have one for Ms. McClendon. Since this was indicated that it was the Falmouth district, does that affect our public hearing?
Chairman Baumke, I don't believe that it does affect the hearing. I'm looking for the ad. I can't find it to make sure it was advertised correctly in the paper. But before the motion is made on the resolution, I suggest correcting the resolution to reflect George Washington District.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Towery. All right, with that, I'll open the public hearing for proposed resolution R18-205. And if you would like to address the board, you can please come forward.
Paul Waldowski, 8 Pickett Lane. Got a lot of FaceTime today. Too bad General Nuisance isn't around. He knows I'd be his exec officer in major disaster. Sure, everything the Public Works Department does in the county is correct. They do it right on the money. You know what VDOT stands for, right? Very dumb on transportation, just so you know. They just don't handle things the way they should be. So it looks to me like you're doing this after the fact. We own the land, and you're just going to grant it to a utilities department forever. I believe I'm a taxpayer, and I own a part of that land, along with the other 128,960 of us. That's from the census 2010. That's not on my paper, I just know it. And look at this nice mistake here, within the Falmouth election district. Remember, Falmouth is on that sign that you can go left on Route 1, or you can go to Stafford. I want a sign that says, where's Rock Hill? Where's Griffiths Whitewater? Where's Aquia? I don't care about Hartwood. And we know about the Garrisonville district. That was gerrymandered a long time ago. So remember, citizens, the town of Falmouth was established in 1726. We're going to redistrict Stafford County. Hopefully we'll make that a town again. Then they can have a mayor and they can have their 7 school systems like they have now.
Mr. Wadowski, could you please stay on subject?
I am on subject. I got 1 minute, right? Once again, my train of thought was disrupted. And during a public hearing, the public gets to speak. When the applicant speaks, then the public gets to speak. Then the applicant comes up and they can rebut anything that the public has said or reinforce it, or at least be offered to not show up. So you are illegally passing resolutions because you're not following Robert's Rules of Order.
Thank you, Mr. Wadowski. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board? With that, I'll close the public hearing. Mrs. McClendon, were you able to find that in the advertisement?
Yes, Madam Chairman. It was actually incorrectly advertised as the Falmouth Election District. I will note, however, that the actual locational directions were accurate. So it is at the southeast corner of Butler Road and Cambridge Street. So that information is correct, and I think a normal citizen would be able to ascertain which corner of the intersection is being described. But if the board, yet again, feels that this did not give sufficient notice, we could always re-advertise it and bring it back for the next meeting.
Okay.
Madam Chair. Mr. Towery, there you are. This is not time sensitive, if I understand correctly?
No, it's not time sensitive.
Thank you.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board? Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, since it's my district, I'm going to ask to defer it so we can advertise it properly, so that we can have everything done the correct way.
Okay.
And I know we're supposed to give you a date, so what date do you need, Ms. McClendon?
We're not actually going to keep the public hearing. It will be a new advertisement, so we don't need a date. This requires at least 1 week's notice, so we'll try to get this in the paper as soon as we can.
Okay. So it's fair to say at our next meeting?
I would have to check with the clerk to ensure we can meet the Freelance Stars deadline for that.
Okay. Do we want to?
Okay,
As soon as
so,
the next
we'll go-
available, or is that too
Sure.
vague for you, ma'am?
That's fine.
Okay, then I'll make a motion to defer this to the next available meeting.
Okay. Motion. Have a motion and a second. All right. Any other discussion? Okay. With that, please cast your vote for a deferral. Tally the vote. Motion passes unanimously. This concludes the 7 o'clock meeting. Meeting is adjourned.